Oh, you know what I love?
Sports.
I love sports.
Sports.
When it comes to Texas A&M.
Where are you getting this information?
Let me tell you.
Welcome to TexAgs.
I need to talk a little sports with you, Aggs. David Nuño here with TexAgs Radio. Billy Lucci here on TexAgs Radio. Olin Buchanan.
We will develop men, we will graduate players, and we will win championships on the field.
The best way for us to win is to do it together.
Do you realize everybody knows who you are right now?
Very thankful for 12th man. They've won us games.
Been in college baseball for a while now, but I've never experienced anything like 12th man.
That's about as pretty a throw-catch combo as there is.
I saw the safety roll, the slot fade. I knew where I needed to put the ball.
Our skill set worked great together. Like, he was more speed and I was more power, and then we put together, it was like thunder and lightning, you know.
You know, if I'm betting on anybody, it's the Aggies.
Press conference day, the day before it all begins. Welcome into TexAgs Radio, presented by David Gardner's Jewelers Rollo Insurance Studio. It is the Go Hour, presented by the Warehouse at CC Creations. Today is Tuesday, July 30th, 2024. I'm David Nuño, and I got my partner here, Olin Buchanan. OB, good morning, buddy.
Good morning.
So Billy had a great discussion with Mike Elko on Saturday at our preseason kickoff. So I don't know if anything new will come today from them, but it'll be nice to hear, because we've said the last couple of days, like each of these benchmarks, if you will, today is it. Like they're ready. They're starting tomorrow.
Yeah, I mean it's getting real, as they say. There's still things to ask about.
What do you want to know?
Well, as you enter August camp, when do you? Coaches are different. When do you think that you'll have an idea of your starting lineup?
Yeah.
Okay. Where are you going to, work certain players, Is Chase Basante as a guard? Will he be working primarily at guard now? Personnel issues, things like that. I was talking to Louis yesterday, and we were talking about how Mike Elko's, obviously I'm sure he has an appreciation for baseball. His son, I believe, plays at Richmond.
Yeah.
There's an old saying in baseball that a good defense is built up the middle. You start up the middle, right? Catcher, pitcher, shortstop, second baseman, center field. You have to be strong at the middle. Do you feel the same way about football? And if you do, how do you feel about the middle of your defense? Things like that. There's all kinds of still things to wonder about going into it. How do you feel about the receiver situation? What's been now that you've had a complete off season behind you, what has been the Tommy Moffitt impact?
Right.
Those kind of things.
Yeah. If you got a question that you'd like to hear from Coach Elko, let us know. 979-693-1150. You can call it in, or you can text us at that number, 979-693-1150. If you call it, we'll pick it up on the Boss Firearms hotline. Boss Firearms, your local experts. They buy used guns, ammo, accessories. Go to bossfirearms.com to start earning money like a boss today. OB, lists are made for us to argue about, to agree with, disagree. Typically, when I bring up a list, and there's going to be one later on in the show that I'm going to bring up that's going to upset me. I'm just going to tell you. But this current list I'm about to tell you, I'm actually okay with.
And what is that?
Well, it's The Athletic, and I think they also ran it on the New York Times. I don't know if they have a partnership with them or not. But college football top 25, a model's ranking and projected win totals for 2024. Okay? And on this list here, they say, this gentleman by the name of Austin Mock says, I use play-by-play data to make projections for each college football team. The projections are not made up of box scores, statistics, but also returning production, recruiting rankings, and transfers. These projections aren't who the model believes is most likely to win the national championship or make the playoffs. More of that in the coming weeks, but instead an overall power ranking using the outputs of the model I've built with an algorithm to simulate every game of the season 100,000 times.
Okay.
So,
by the way, I think the New York Times bought The Athletic.
That's probably why it was on there. Okay. So, who do you think number 1 is? You know
Georgia.
the answer. Yeah. Number 2, you'll probably know the answer.
Ohio State.
Yep. Number 3 is Oregon.
Okay.
Number 4 is Texas.
Okay.
Number 5 is Alabama.
All right.
Number 6 is LSU.
Okay.
Number 7 is Ole Miss.
Okay, I could see Ole Miss ahead of LSU, but go on.
Number 8 is Penn State.
Okay, they're expecting a big year.
Number 9 is Notre Dame.
Okay.
Number 10 is?
Texas A&M?
Yes, sir.
How about that?
Look at that smile on your
How
face.
about
That's
that?
a legitimate smile.
I don't know if
You weren't expecting that, right?
No, I wasn't.
Yeah.
Actually, if LSU is 6 or whatever, then maybe it shouldn't come as a surprise that A&M is that high, because again, we were there in Baton Rouge.
Yeah.
And A&M was playing a team with the Heisman Trophy quarterback and 2 first-round draft choices and playing out of the shot. I mean, A&M was within less than a touchdown in the late in the fourth quarter.
Yeah. So, and I'll just tell you some of the other teams just because I think it's interesting fodder. Missouri, number 11. By the way, it's like 90% of this are SEC teams, as expected.
Right, and A&M's already playing 3 of them that you mentioned.
And I like to see this one. Michigan at number 12.
Okay.
I don't know if I buy it because I just don't believe you replace an offensive line completely and expect to be that good.
Right. And, yeah, so many other good players. But they still have good players back.
So I'm going to keep reading some of these because it makes you not feel as good about A&M being at number 10. 13, Oklahoma.
Okay.
14, Utah.
But, you can't really come up with, when I'm talking about Oklahoma, you can't really come up with, at least I would think the box score is not going to help you gauge what you have back in your offensive line. And
right.
So, but okay. So after Oklahoma, you said Utah? Huh. I heard they had a good center.
Yeah. Kansas State.
Huh. That's interesting. Their best corners here, and they're part-time starting quarterbacks now at Ohio State.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Florida State.
All right.
Tennessee.
I
guess I'm doing
Wait. With I'm leaving on a jet plane here.
Number 17.
All the way down to 17. That's surprising. I heard he's going to win the Heisman Trophy.
Oklahoma State at 18.
Okay.
Clemson 19.
Yeah, Clemson's got to figure some things out.
USC 20. I don't know if I buy that.
Yeah, I have but it is, I mean, we're all the way down to 20 with USC. That's, I don't understand why USC just doesn't have great talent every year.
Yep.
Especially if there's no real rules against tampering, and Lincoln Riley's the king of tampering. But, I wonder if the state of California still produces as many high-level players as they used to.
A good question to investigate.
So many political things that changed with funding for schools and athletics and yada, 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 and maybe as many kids don't participate.
We could probably look at the blue chips that are coming out of the states and how that. Matthew, you have an answer for us? I hear your mouth moving.
I just think there are a lot of talent in California. I just do not think that they are staying in L.A. I mean, we see Mike Elko's. Well, one thing I heard, it was a good theory, was about state income tax, because kids are getting smarter now. They got agents now. They got people telling them, hey, you're not going to be making as much money here.
Yeah.
I can make as much money there.
And it costs more to live on top of there.
Yeah, which is why, I'm
going to take more of your money and charge you more.
I think UCLA, when they fired, or they didn't fire Chip Kelly, but when he left to go to Ohio State and they're replacing a coach, I remember a huge rumor was that PJ Fleck was going to go there. I believe he visited LA, but the reality is the cost of living there in LA was so huge, and just travel, traffic, there were, I think, a bunch of factors that led PJ Fleck to staying in Minnesota. So, despite what UCLA fans will tell you.
I'll round out this top 25. 21 Arizona, 22 Miami, 23 Kansas, Virginia Tech at 24, Louisville at 25. But of that list, if A&M ends up being the 10th best team in the country. Again, this is not necessarily who's going to make the playoffs, but it is kind of an algorithm, and I'll read it again, of statistics, returning production, recruiting rankings, and transfers.
Makes you look at that season opener and say, that's a toss-up.
Well, that's what Vegas has been saying, right? So, and the winner on this projection will, slide into that 9th or 8th spot potentially.
Yeah. I'm not going to complain about A&M ever being like in a top 10 of a good poll or a good ranking system or whatever. I take all those with a grain of salt, but a lot of them make sense to me, just off the top of my head, without delving into it.
I agree.
LSU, though, I'm still trying to figure that one out.
I don't see that.
You know.
But again, Nick, I don't know if you can pull up their schedule.
Yeah, the schedule screams 10 wins.
So
screams.
Just based on that alone, if LSU has 10 wins, they're in the playoffs, right?
Probably. So I would.
And if you're in the playoffs, you've got to be a top. USC, I think they're going to win. Nichols, they're going to win. At South Carolina, they're going to win. UCLA, they're going to win. South Alabama, they're going to win. Ole Miss,
probably a loss.
But they're hosting them, so maybe we'll see.
Okay, yeah, you're right. They're at home, but
so is that 6? Yeah, 6, and then at Arkansas 7. Their first loss is either Ole Miss or A&M.
That looks like 9-3. I said screams 10 wins, and but that looks like 9-3 to me because I'm going to take A&M in that game.
You'll take Ole Miss, you'll take A&M, you'll take Bama.
Yeah. And again, you say, well, that's real homerific, but I'm saying, look, and I know A&M's not the same team, but what was the driving force of LSU's success last year? And it was on the road, and that game was
A&M was leading, and
with A&M playing a backup quarterback.
Yeah.
So, I don't want to say we've said this over and over. I don't want to say Garrett Nussmeier is not a good quarterback.
He might be great.
He might be. He might not. We really don't know about Garrett Nussmeier. He lit up Wisconsin, which was not even a typical Wisconsin team. And, he had some success against Georgia 2 years ago in the championship game.
But with
Georgia
that offense and with that schedule, he'll be just good enough.
He'll be, yeah, with that schedule for sure. And you say with that offense, but is it the offense that make the players or is it the players that make the offense?
I think it's the players.
Jimmy's and Joe's beat X's and O's.
Yep. So anyway, that's the New York Times / The Athletics top 25 power rankings, if you will. A&M coming in at number 10. I'm okay with it.
Yeah, I'm okay with it.
Hopefully it turns out to be the case. I wouldn't put A&M at the 10th best team power index wise right now because I just haven't seen it.
You gotta show it. There's been too many times. Well, just in the last 3 or 4 years where A&M entered the season ranked number 6 and was gross disappointment.
Matthew, you might have a better memory than OB and myself. In fact, I know you do because you're an engineer. Last year in the SEC, how many quarterbacks missed time? I feel like a lot of them, right? At some point, missed some time.
Well, I don't know off the top of my head.
No, I don't either. But I guess my point is if you look at each team, there were a lot. And that's what I think is going to be a big question for Texas and for Oklahoma is, we always talk about like the depth, QB depth as well. Quinn Ewers has missed some time. Now, it hasn't been a long time, but he has missed some time. How do you do with an SEC schedule with all the talent you're facing? It's different than Big 12 talent.
It's true.
How your quarterbacks do.
Well, again, A&M had Connor Wigman all year. You probably put a couple more wins on that record from last year. That don't mean to be cracking on Max or anything, but it's just factual.
Yep. No doubt about that. All right, let's open up the phone lines, 979-693-1150. This is Coffee Talk brought to you by TexAgs Coffee. Beat the hell out of mornings by going to texags.com/coffee. We go around the room and we say hi to the people. Nick Savage is behind the glass. Nick, good morning, buddy.
Howdy, good morning, y'all.
What's going on with you?
I'm going to change gears a little bit. Just a quick note. Bronny put out this morning that if you want some baseball fix, or if you want your baseball fix in the fall for Aggie baseball, there have been 2, exhibition games set up at Olson. It's going to be Houston Christian on October 4th. That's actually a bye week, I think, for A&M. I think I looked at that earlier. And then October 25th, it'll be the University of Houston, and that's the day before the LSU game. So, again, if you want to early look at your Aggie baseball team, then you're going to get some in the fall.
That weekend's going to be a big weekend in my house.
Yeah, it is.
I'm having all kinds of crazy things happening. Of course, I'm going to have a house full of domers at the end of this month.
Oh, that's
Yeah,
right.
and then I'm going to have a house full of.
I want to correct something. October 4th is the day before the Mizzou game.
Mizzou.
Yeah, not a bye week. So, again, plenty of people
I think the
will
bye
be in
week
town
might
for
be
that.
the next week.
Right.
And then, that last game in October, I'm going to have a house full of LSU D-bag frat boys.
Do they know you call them that?
Oh, yeah. They do.
All right, let's go to the Angry Elephant News and Social Center. Aggies gather at the Angry Elephant. Matthew Dawson already joined us for a moment earlier. What's going on, Matthew?
I'm doing all right. In terms of the quarterback thing that y'all were bringing up, I think there were more quarterback problems than there were injuries. I mean, I can think of a couple situations where there was time lost because of an injury.
Arkansas,
A&M. Mississippi State, Will Rogers had issues there. Vanderbilt just had a quarterback issue. Both those quarterbacks are at different Power 5 schools now. Jalen Milroe missed that. Well, he didn't miss a game, but he got benched for the South Florida game. Auburn, Peyton Thorne, I believe, and they couldn't figure their stuff out there, even though Peyton Thorne's going to go back out there this year. So I think there are more quarterback problems than there were necessarily injuries.
Yeah.
But it always happens, and some conferences are different than others. I mean, the NFL last year was one of the craziest years, quarterback injuries. I think it's just a volatile kind of thing, very year to year.
Yep. Bottom line is you better have a lot of every position in the SEC.
You better have depth.
And you better hope you don't have walk-ons playing in your bowl game. Like, unless they're walk-ons who play regularly, you don't want, because of injuries or transfers, to have that to happen.
Because then you're going to have a Florida State moment.
Yeah.
What was that? What was that score, like 70-0, something outrageous?
Well, and A&M had it.
Well, I know, but A&M had a chance to win.
They did. But they gave up a lot of big plays.
They did.
What else, Matthew?
Well, we got 3 Aggies competing in the Olympics today, including one right now.
Tell me who.
Krajcek is going right now in doubles. He won the first set 6-4, and they're up 6-5 in the second set.
Finish it, Krajcek.
It looks like they're about to drop that one. They're down 40-15, but gotta believe. And then we also got an archer going today, Catalina Ginoriega, class of 28. She's competing today. Actually just started as well, so hopefully people can tune into that as well. And then swimming, Beryl Gastadello, class of 2018, former SEC champion. She's competing in the 100-meter backstroke finals today at 2 p.m.
For who?
For France.
Oh, yeah, with some of those names, I'm thinking they probably didn't come out of East Texas.
Well, yeah, Ginoriega, she's actually competing for America.
Okay.
Project's also competing for America.
All right.
So, and then Gastadello's the only one competing for France. But a little home court advantage. She was, I think, a second and a half behind kind of medal placing range in the backstroke, at least based on her time yesterday. So hopefully she gives it her best today.
Matthew, appreciate you, sir. Thank you very much. When we come back here on TexAgs Radio, 24-24, we're in the teens. Number 19.
Number 19.
You know who it is?
Yeah.
Without looking? Okay, don't say it.
I won't.
All right. Maybe we can come back with a little Will Smith, Big Willie style.
Yeah.
You think that would fit?
I'm kind of cold in here. I need a blanket.
I like the way you think, OB. Right now, we are talking about the Association of Former Students, and they got a lot of cool things to be a part of, but sponsor and vendor opportunities are available there if your business is looking for an opportunity to engage with Aggies. Check out the Association of Former Students to do that. They bring Aggies of all ages together during events held throughout the year. Marquee events like Aggie Ring Day, All Aggie Hullabaloo Gathering, welcome tens of thousands of guests, and there are many sponsorship and vendor opportunities available to get your brand in front of those attendees. All events offer a wide variety of both digital and in-person options to promote your brand. Options include title sponsorship, naming, on-site presence, activation, recognition, and social media posts, and much, much more. There's also advertising opportunities in both the Texas Aggie Magazine and the Aggie News newsletter, which are seen by over 230,000 people. So if your business is ready to engage with Aggies, choose a partner with the organization that's been supporting the Aggie Network for over 140 years. For more information on options available, visit the association by going to emailing sponsorships@aggienetwork.com. That is sponsorships@aggienetwork.com. It's the Association of Former Students. Wow, this song is terrible. I just knew it was the name of a song. I didn't actually know it. It's TexAgs Radio. Presented by David Gardner's Jewelers, Rollo Insurance Studio. Go Hour, presented by The Warehouse at CC Creations. That song is Big Willie style because we're doing 24 and 24, and our number 19 guy is Will Lee. At FBS Appliance, they're committed to delivering an exceptional experience from start to finish. You can trust them to provide unparalleled service and support every step of the way because FBS Appliance is your trusted appliance store. Visit any of their 8 showrooms across Texas and find them online at factorybuilderstores.com. What you think, man? Will Lee?
Yeah, the blanket. I'm going to be honest. I'm not going to try to lie and spin things and make things act like I'm an expert on something I'm not. I haven't seen Will Lee play. I mean, I
see some highlights on YouTube.
I see some highlights and things like that. And the thing about highlights, they're only good plays, right?
Yep.
But I do know this. I think is it Pro Football Focus that had him listed as one of the top returning cornerbacks in the country as draftable and things like that. And he did have 2 interceptions last year, which may not sound like much, but that would have tied for the A&M lead.
Right.
He broke up a lot of passes. I'll take that. And, here's a guy that played in a league where they like to throw it. And, he had, by all accounts, a good year. And when you look at the problems that A&M has, I'm confident it's an upgrade there.
Do you like tall cornerbacks? Because I do.
I do, but
I like having options.
I like anybody in cover.
Yeah, he's 6'3".
Yeah.
All right, he's a big dude. Let's see. I liked when I gauge my excitement level for a transfer, and I did this the other day. I'll do it again. What schools want you? Okay,
right.
Now, here are the schools that want them. Florida.
Okay.
LSU.
Mm-hmm.
USC.
Yeah.
Auburn.
Yeah.
Ole Miss.
Mm-hmm.
Michigan State.
Yeah.
South Carolina. Arkansas. Louisville.
Those are some big-time programs.
Yeah.
So, you got a guy that a lot of your SEC rivals wanted. A lot of big-time programs wanted, and you got him, and it's a position of need. So I think it's great. I just hope that, I hope that moniker holds up and that he is in the blanket and coverage. And quite frankly, I hope that, we see some more interceptions and some electric returns, and he turns out to be an electric blanket.
All Big 12 selection this past season, 42 tackles, 2 interceptions, also forced a fumble.
And I know he had about 42 tackles. Is that what you said?
Yep.
So, he's a guy that doesn't mind being a little bit physical. Now, you said that about height. Look, it can be a great tool, but can you cover it? The numbers say he can. But the best, again, I came here. I think I got skewed from the moment I arrived in Aggie land in '93, and the first team I covered, the cornerbacks were like 5'8" Ray Mickens and 5'10" Aaron Glenn.
Right.
And I go, hey, you know what? Just be able to cover.
Well, here's the thing. I think the Jimbo era of getting transfers was not his strong suit. Is that a fair assessment?
Yeah, I think that's
and the ones that he brought in,
okay.
Not only did he not get many, the ones he got here, especially when it came to the secondary, they were, Sam McCall, like I list the guys.
Did Sam McCall ever? Well, yeah, he did play. I saw him get beat at Tennessee.
Josh DeBerry,
Josh DeBerry, they played him out of position, so he looked worse.
I think he had the Miami game that was really good, right? Is that the game? No, it was the opening game, the opener last year.
Yeah,
he played pretty well.
He got just barbecued against Alabama. Moved into safety, had an end zone interception against Tennessee, but there was a safety trying to play corner. Will Lee's a cornerback.
So exactly right, and I guess it's not fair to evaluate what this secondary group is doing in the transfer portal based on what the prior regime did. They have a completely different set of eyes, analytics, and so to me, I'm super excited about what the secondary is going to look like, and I'll tell you part of the reason. Billy's excited about it, and when Billy's not excited about something, typically that group isn't very good, and he seems to be pretty optimistic about it.
Yeah, a guy like Will Lee, I think, again, who's been a starter, an all-conference player, and played against some, good passing teams.
Tony Grimes was the other guy that we didn't get to see play.
That we never saw, right? So when you bring him in, you feel better about the situation. You have to. I think the situation at corner was going to be better anyway, just because freshmen become sophomores.
Yep.
And sophomores are typically better than freshmen. But you get a guy in that, again, pro football focus, I think it is, thinks highly of him. He was an all-conference guy, as you mentioned. I think I don't know how you can look at it and say they haven't upgraded.
Yeah, they've upgraded. And now let's looking at the position group as a whole for a moment, because I'm super excited about Terry Bussey whenever his day comes.
What's he going to play? Maybe that's a question for
that is a question. But all indications are defense, right?
Right.
But super excited about him.
But just with the dynamics of the roster this year, wouldn't maybe it make more sense to work him in his first year at receiver and try to use all that athleticism at receiver for this year? And then
I just haven't felt
Okay.
Coach Elko lean that way, right? When they've asked in the past, because they've asked a couple times.
Right.
I haven't felt him, but look, if he can do it and we need it, of course, right? That's the way I kind of look at it. But the fact you're getting Tyreek Chappelle back as well.
Yeah, he came back. And the kid from Alabama comes in who was a 5-star.
Yep. And we'll be talking about him at some point this week.
Guy from, where's Mays from?
BJ Mays, South Florida.
South Florida?
UAB?
Sorry, UAB. Who's the South Florida one?
I don't think we got a South. We got Jaden Hill, who's from
Florida. From Florida. Who's going to be great, by the way.
From what I understand, is a really good nickelback. So anyway, you got like you're going with options.
You have options. You have some size and some veterans coming back.
And again, some of the veterans coming back who are freshmen last year will be better this year because they've got a year of experience and growth.
Yeah. All right, let's hit a break here. When we come back, can I talk Johnny Manziel for a moment? Is that okay?
I know where you're going with that.
Are you upset that I'm bringing it up, or are you happy with it?
No, you're absolutely justified.
All right. I think I'll wait till the other side before I go on a rant. Let's talk Heritage Films. That's Chancellor McLean's company. They make documentary films about families, and they've been doing it for about, 3 or 4 years now, ever since I got here to TexAgs. And he loves to tell people stories. And that story can be of a singular focus, one guy, like your grandfather, your dad. It can be about your entire family. It can be about a family event. It can be about a family business, a family ranch. He can do, and it could be about a bunch of buddies that get together. Like you got a tailgating group that gets together every A&M home football game, and they like to party together. They bring their kids or grandkids, and it's kind of a celebration. Chance can shoot that and have a documentary for them and interview everybody and get you ready for football season by doing that. He is amazing at telling stories. He also has a Yearflix, which is an option, which is a 20-minute Q&A benchmark video for the younger kids in the family. Cool thing that he's been doing for a while, and we did it with my daughter Annalise, and it's not as long and it's awesome, but it's not as long as the Heritage Film. This is more quick, fun video that he uses a green screen in the background. It's great. The phone number is 713-893-8341, 713-893-8341. The website, yourheritagefilm.com. That is yourheritagefilm.com. So any list that doesn't have Johnny Manziel listed in the top 25 players of the 21st century is not even a list. It's just people writing on a piece of paper. It's TexAgs Radio, presented by David Gardner's Jewelers, Rollo Insurance Studio, Go Hour, presented by The Warehouse at CC Creations, Bill Connelly, who sometimes does good work. But on this particular list, and we can go through the list, and in the first part of it, the ranking, whatever, that's an argument for a different day. But if you can't find a room for one of the most illustrious seasons, dynamic players we've seen ever in the history of college football,
right?
We're in other lists, including a whole other century, he makes the top 25, and we just narrow it to the last 24, and he doesn't. So I'll go through some of these, and tell me when you think, okay, Johnny should be there, okay?
Okay.
And not necessarily the order, but like when we reach a name, they're like, come on.
Right.
Ndamukong Suh.
No problem with that.
Baker Mayfield.
If Baker's on there, Johnny has to be on there.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Cam Newton.
No problem.
Vince.
No problem.
Ed Reed.
No problem.
Tim Tebow.
You know, Johnny was more dynamic than Tim Tebow. What drives me crazy about Tim Tebow argument is people say, he won 2 national championships. No, first of all, no, he didn't. Chris Leak was the quarterback when they won the first one. The second one, I always say, did they win that because Tim Tebow was a big part of it, no doubt, obviously. But did they win that championship because of Tim Tebow beat Oklahoma? Was that because of Tim Tebow when they scored 24 points, or was that because the defense held that high-scoring Oklahoma to 14 points? So I'm not gonna complain that they put Tim Tebow on that list. What I'm saying is, for some reason, most of the media just falls at the feet of Tim Tebow. And oh my gosh,
I love him. I do.
But the fact of the matter is, he was perfect for the offense he was running, just like you could say for Johnny. And yes, his team won a national championship. But again, was he a big part of one national championship? Absolutely, no doubt. I mean, he was a quarterback, but they won that. They beat Oklahoma because of their defense.
Reggie Bush, no problem.
No problem.
Bryant McKinney, Miami, offensive tackle.
I mean, Bryant McKinney's really good. He was really, really good.
Top 25
dominant.
Players of the 21st century.
I don't have a problem with Bryant McKinney being one of the top 25 players, but not at the expense of leaving Johnny Manziel off.
Joe Burrow, number 9, of course.
Again, I have no problem at all with Joe Burrow being on that list, but not at the expense of Johnny Manziel. I mean, Joe Burrow was one of the reasons that was maybe the best offense ever, but he was not alone in that. So, yes, I would have Joe Burrow on that list.
Larry Fitzgerald.
Yes, I'd have him on the list.
Terrell Suggs.
Well, he had a ton of sacks.
44 sacks in 3 seasons.
Yeah, not at the expense of Johnny Manziel, but on the surface, I have no issue with him. I mean,
Joe Thomas.
Was really good offensive lineman and great at his position, probably better than Bryant McKinney, to be honest.
We're about to give you some names that I think you might start having real problems. Maybe not. Khalil Mack.
I'd have a problem with that. Not that he wasn't great, but when you're dominating playing the MAC, again, on the surface, I don't have an issue with it, but not at the expense of leading Johnny Manziel off. It's just lazy. It's stupid.
Aaron Donald.
No problem.
David Pollock.
Yes, I would have. It's funny. I once had an exchange with David Pollock without even meaning to about Johnny Manziel.
Oh, yeah.
Because he said, if Johnny Manziel, because, they were making him available, and, ESPN guys aren't used to anyone questioning him.
Right.
And he just said, would Johnny Manziel, Johnny Manziel wouldn't be the Heisman Trophy winner if, last year or something like that. I said, why not? Why do you say that? And he got really defensive, and he never answered the question. And then later he goes, I voted for Johnny. I said, I don't care. I was just asking a question. Pollock had some great numbers, but did he make the impact that Johnny Manziel did?
I'm sorry, I don't think so.
No.
Deshaun Watson. should be on the list.
Not ahead of Johnny Manziel. I know he won. He was on a national championship team, and if you want to use that as a criteria, okay, you got that. But as good as he was, he was not better than Johnny Manziel. Put Johnny Manziel on that Clemson team. Hell, Johnny Manziel beat Alabama.
Yeah, he did. 17, Roy Williams. Oklahoma,
Roy Williams. Yeah. Really good. I voted for him for the Heisman one year. Not at the expense of Johnny Manziel.
Kyler Murray.
No. Because Johnny did. I used to tell Gabe, I'd say, this is how I felt about Kyler Murray. I'd say people say that Johnny Manziel was a once in a lifetime player. So that's true if he lived to be 5 years old. I thought Kyler was the next Johnny. But you know what? Kyler played 1 year.
That's true.
Johnny played 2 and was excellent in 2 years.
Devontae Smith.
No, not at the expense of Johnny Manziel.
Lamar Jackson.
Not at the expense of, Lamar, spectacular.
Yeah. I got one for you here. Justin Blackmon.
The Oklahoma State receiver, the crackhead. He really good, but no, not ahead of Johnny Manziel. No, there you're just trying to leave him off.
Will Anderson.
Remind me who Will Anderson is.
Plays for the great Houston Texans.
You mean the Alabama guy that couldn't get past Reuben Fothery on?
That guy, yeah.
No, not at the expense of Johnny Manziel, right. No.
Tyrann Mathieu.
The Honey Badger was pretty spectacular.
He was spectacular.
I don't have a problem with him being on the list. Actually, don't have a problem with many of these guys being on the list. But
just not at the expense of
Johnny Manziel.
Julius Peppers.
Yeah, Julius is on.
Jonathan Taylor.
No, not over. Good running back. Hell yeah, he's a good running back. Behind a bunch of farm boys from Wisconsin playing in the SEC. The Big Ten West. Yeah, he was really good. Good.
Here are the first 10 out. Okay? Johnny's not on this list, by the way.
Oh, my God. This guy.
First 10 out.
Okay, this guy failed spectacularly.
Michael Crabtree.
Okay. Crabtree goes before Blackmon every day of the week if you paid attention to college football.
Dwight Freeney.
Okay.
Robert Gallery.
Big Iowa offensive lineman. He was good, but come on.
RG3.
Johnny was better than RG3.
Calvin Johnson.
I don't have an issue with that.
Yeah, I don't have an issue.
But here's the deal, though. Here's the deal. Why, if I was going to argue that, I'd say, look, Calvin Johnson was a better NFL player than he was a college player because he was playing for Paul Johnson in that triple option, and he only probably caught 3 or 4 passes a game.
Yeah, he gets credit for his NFL career. Derek Johnson.
Texas linebacker, really good. I covered him. Spectacular player, not at the expense of Johnny Manziel.
Luke Kuechly.
Really good, really
not at the expense of Johnny.
He had the cancer and he came back, but yeah, I'm thinking not at the expense of Johnny.
Trevor Lawrence. Okay.
I don't have an issue with that.
Marcus Mariota. Not at the expense of Johnny.
What are we doing here?
Yeah, right?
What was the thing? Jesus Girls and Marcus Mariota, right? That was the big T-shirt. Because they asked some kid that, hey, what are things kids in your school talk about? Because at a private school, he goes, Jesus Girls and Marcus Mariota. Yeah, he was huge, but and yeah, he won the Heisman and everything, just like Johnny, but
nobody.
No, I don't even know what to say about that.
And then the other one was Christian McCaffrey,
who lost the Heisman Trophy to another running back that year.
By the way, I did vote for Christian McCaffrey for the Heisman. I think that was the year they might have given it to Mark Ingram. Is that right?
Derrick Henry.
Mark
Ingram was the Toby Gerhart year.
Oh,
different Stanford year.
You know what? I got it. You're right. I got that wrong. I voted for Tony Gerhart. Toby Gerhart, and I did vote for Derrick Henry, and got lambasted by some for that.
By the way,
so no. In fact, where's Derrick Henry?
Johnny Manziel, to me, like transcended the sport.
Well, how many records do you have to break
as a freshman
to get on the list?
63 touchdowns in his 2 seasons, 22 picks, ran for 2,169 yards and 30 touchdowns. The dude was freaking incredible.
I mean, and then that Duke game. I mean, he got hurt.
93 total touchdowns in 2 years.
It was crazy. I remember back-to-back weeks covering Johnny, and they announced one week, hey, he just broke this all-time record set by SEC record by Archie Manning. And then the next week, he broke another all-time record set by Archie Manning. I remember writing, well, at this rate, he's going to have 3 sons that win the Super Bowl. He's breaking everything. Archie did. I don't know.
Freshman record for passing yards, single game, and season rushing yards, 100 rushing games, and season touchdowns, tied for the freshman record for a single passing game touchdown. I mean, come on, guys. What are we doing here?
Yeah, that's.
I don't know who has to go off the list, but I know who has to go on the list. And I could pick 5 or 6. No, I could pick 10 or 15. I know I could pick 20 guys of the 35 because I'm at, that I could put Johnny over.
Yeah. And and I'm not one of those guys that just loves Johnny because of those 2 great years, especially his 2012. I loved watching him play. I'm not an apologist for him because I think he's still immature. I think it was just last year or the year before he agreed to get some money and show up to a public event at Corpus Christi, and it didn't show. I don't think, I don't get into that kind of irresponsibility and celebrate that. But I know college football, and if you're going to make a list based on what you did in college football, you can't leave Johnny Manziel off that list, especially when we were talking about who was it we said that they're giving a lot of credit for his NFL career, right? If that's going to be based on
Calvin Johnson.
Calvin Johnson.
Yeah.
If you're going to base it on, now anybody could look at Calvin Johnson and say this guy's special. Look what he's doing in the offense where he's never should have gone. And I will tell you that if you want to say, hey, give me the top 25 players in the NFL in the 21st century, I'm going to put Calvin Johnson on there, Megatron. But you can't leave Johnny Manziel off that list, and
stupid. It's just dumb. Sorry, guys. Bill, I'm sure you're a nice dude. That list is dumb.
I don't buy into ESPN. I really don't.
Let's hit a break here. When we come back, we got some text messages we got to pay off. We'll do that. But how about our good friends there at Caldwell Country Chevrolet? So I was going back and forth with Adam Dunker there yesterday, and this is something new. At least it was new to me. Free oil changes for life on purchases from Caldwell Country as long as you own the vehicle. So if you buy your car, isn't that a great deal? It's pretty dark, especially with the prices right now. Like Caldwell Country Chevrolet, free oil changes for life on your purchase as long as you own that vehicle. They're a proud supporter of Aggie athletics, but they're a proud supporter of this area. They've been doing it for a long time. They've got. Well, buddy, hey, I got my car at Caldwell.
Yeah, right.
I actually did.
Yeah.
So I can take advantage of this.
Yeah, right now my truck's paid off, so I don't think I'm ready.
Yeah, I think you're going to ride that into the depths. Yeah, I get it. But they're locally owned and operated by Aggies, and they do have complimentary pickup and delivery for service customers. And they have a strong, committed sales staff with many years of experience and customer needs there. They want to be the premier dealer because they are the premier dealer for commercial vehicles and all of your small business needs there. Make the short drive to Caldwell, and you're going to experience a car buying experience like never before. They have a huge inventory to fit most needs, and they make long-lasting relationships and friendships there at Caldwell Country Chevrolet. Caldwell Country is just south of the big city prices. It is about a 15-minute drive, Bryan to Caldwell, short conversation away, but you'll see the difference when you step on the lot and do business with the great people there at Caldwell Country Chevrolet. Highway 21 in Caldwell, online, caldwellcountrychevrolet.com. big Creed guy?
No, I'm not. Apollo.
And Adonis?
Yeah, Apollo. Yeah, I never saw that.
Buddy, you're missing out.
I've heard it's a
You're
really
missing
good
out.
movie.
They're good.
I don't see a lot of movies anymore.
Why not? I went to the theater for the first time in a long time this weekend.
Huh? What'd you see? Oh yeah, of course. Never mind. I know what
you know what I like.
Deadpool and. Yeah.
It was great.
Oh, okay.
Have you watched? You've watched them, right? I think you told me.
I saw the first one.
Did you like the first one? I forget what.
Is that Ryan Reynolds?
Yeah.
I mean,
you laughed.
I couldn't remember the movie itself. I can remember like the opening, like a chase scene.
Yeah.
And I can remember not hating it.
It was funny. This one was good. I really enjoyed it.
You know what? I need to go. Because now I'm a fan of Ryan Reynolds. I'm more of a fan of his wife, Blake Lively. She's done some good work.
Yeah.
But, since they named their son Olin.
That's right.
I
forgot about that.
Obviously, TexAgs.
I have a. Can I give a spoiler alert?
Yeah.
Blake Lively might be in the movie somewhere. Might.
Okay.
She might be in the movie. You got to look for her.
It'd
be hard to find her.
Yeah, I would. Yeah, I would. If Blake Lively was my wife, I'd probably want her, working with me.
Yeah.
Whenever, if as an actor,
You have asked for Irma to replace me on the show, so I get it.
No, never to replace you, but there are other people. Actually, let me tell you something. Irma has done some, and the owners here would back this up. Irma has done some amazing work here.
Oh, I know she has.
One year, Johnny Manziel, since we've been talking about Johnny,
Yeah.
came here to sell, some of his merchandise, right?
Yeah.
And we're going to sell it here. And it was a cold day. It was the day they beat Kentucky.
Sure.
And I don't think TexAgs was prepared. The line was going all the way around the building here, and it was just a cluster. And so finally, Irma steps up, so okay, and she just takes over and on the fly develops. Here's how we're going to do this, and boom, 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 it started working efficiently.
Couple of quick texts to read. John in Cyprus. OB brings the ultimate dad joke, electric blanket. Can't skip over his elite execution. Another one came in from Matt in San Antonio. I read an article on Bill Connelly comparing the 2011-2012 A&M to 2023-24 and said despite a 7-6 record, the 2011 team finished 11th in the nation in advanced rankings. Advanced rankings in 23 despite 7-6 finish. A&M was 16th in the nation in his rankings. He also made a parallel between 2012 and 2024 with a new head coach and talented quarterback.
The only reason how come I can't pull the trigger on saying a 10-win season is because history.
Yep.
Recent history.
OB, thank you.
Yeah.
Charean Williams coming up next on TexAgs Radio. We're back here on TexAgs Radio, presented by David Gardner's Jewelers Rollo Insurance Studio. OB was just getting warmed up when we were talking about the whole Johnny Manziel thing, so he's going to stick around and talk to Charean Williams from Pro Football Talk, the Hall of Famer, the great Aggie. Charean, good morning. How are you?
I'm good. How are you guys doing? It seems like forever since we've talked.
I know. When was the last time? Like 2 or 3 weeks?
It's been a while. I think it's been longer than that. Probably 3 or 4 weeks.
Oh, well, we're happy you're back. I don't know if you
I
saw
missed you guys.
did you see the article that Johnny Manziel was not listed as one of the top 20?
I did.
Yeah. What'd you think?
It was nuts, and it had no offense to Baker Mayfield, but it had Baker Mayfield over Cam Newton, for instance. I thought it was awful. And I think Ndamukong Suh was number 1 on the list.
Yep.
Right? I mean, Ndamukong Suh was a great player, but how you can put a defensive player as the best player ever in college, I don't understand that. I mean, if it's not a quarterback, then what are we even doing here? Like, seriously. So
that's almost the same thing. I said, what are we doing here?
Really bad risk. Well, and here we are. A lot of times, people do this type of stuff, and here we are sitting talking about it. And that's what they want. I mean, they want people to go and look at it, comment on it, and they're getting the interaction that they wanted. So I would be willing to guess that that's the case here. I would hope that's the case here, and this isn't a real list, because if it is, boy, you need to go find another profession.
Well, that's for sure. It's like when Irma sends me to the grocery store, and I always forget something obvious, right?
Right.
And this guy forgot something obvious. And I don't have a problem with the Ndamukong Suh being on the list. He was a dominant player, but again,
agreed,
not over Johnny Manziel. And Baker Mayfield was a good quarterback who was in a great situation. Playing in the Big 12 with the best players against bad teams.
Well, and if you think about what Johnny did and what history was like without Johnny for a few years, the heights that he took this program to, what he did, he was first to do, by the way. And I saw somebody on the chat mention Lamar Jackson was great, yes, but Johnny did it first.
Well, and Johnny was like one of the first 2 or 3 guys in history to have 3,000 yards passing and 1,000 yards rushing in the same season. And again, how many records do you have to break before somebody from ESPN deems you as one of the best? It's just it's why I like to read people like Charean Williams and not people like Bill Connelly.
Hey, Charean, go ahead. I'm sorry.
It was not a good list. I was just going to say, it really was not a good list. From the rankings to leaving out Johnny to, and I would argue that Kyler Murray was a better quarterback than Baker Mayfield was. But I wouldn't have had, he was a good quarterback. Obviously, he won the Heisman Trophy, but it was a system. I mean, you can't deny it was a system, the way those quarterbacks kept winning Heismans. And you're right, they were on good teams playing bad teams in the Big 12. I'm sorry, but that's what it was. And that's why they didn't win national championships with those Heisman Trophy winning quarterbacks.
Charean, the best, not the best reason you're here, you're always great, but a big reason you're here is we got football season actually here. We've got games starting in the NFL. We've got practice starting tomorrow for Texas A&M. So just your thoughts here as the Aggies are about to start practicing.
Yeah, I'm headed to the Hall of Fame this week, so it started. August is my least favorite month of the year. It's so hot. And B, the game, we get to the end of the year and the college games start to count. But the whole beginning of the year, you've got to get through this preseason that doesn't count, that's so boring. To me, it's just an awful, awful month. So I dread the month of August. Can we get down to when the games count at the end of the month? We got about a month to go, and I'll start getting excited about it. And it always seems like, we get that excitement. I know fans get really excited, but it seems like to me, from a working perspective, the summer is way not long enough, because you just start getting into, I'm getting a break, and it's like, okay, the Texans went to camp today. Here we go again, And so it never seems like the summer lasts nearly as long as it should last. But give me a few weeks, and I'll start getting really excited about it. But I am excited to go to the Hall of Fame this week, and not necessarily the game, but at least to see some of these guys going to the Hall of Fame. Texas will have their first player ever to go into the Hall of Fame, Andre Johnson.
So when you go up to Canton, which someday that's a bucket list for me, because I love football and
it's great.
I've never been there, but I'd love to go. So do you have certain parties that you get to go to because you're a Hall of Famer that nobody else, peons like me and David don't get to go to?
You're talking about me, bro.
That's why I said David.
Well,
no, not me.
You have the players part, and I would go to Canton. I would definitely go for the enshrinement weekend. It's fantastic. You don't even necessarily have to go to the game, but get there on a Friday and the gold jacket dinner on Friday night, which is, to me, that's more. I like that more than I even like the induction ceremony when they get their gold jackets and all the Hall of Famers there. You get up close view of over 100 Hall of Famers who are there and have form a line that the new enshrinees go through, and then they get their gold jackets. And it's just a really cool experience. I have that Friday night, and then the inductions are Saturday, and then players have parties. So it depends on how many of those that are, frankly, Cowboys or that I can talk my way into. So I have talked my way into, I think, Andre Johnson's party for this year, which is Saturday night. So I'll be attending Andre Johnson's party on Saturday night. And usually they're very good. I went to Rondé Barber's. Was that last year, I think? I went to a couple last year. And Rondé Barber's was outstanding. They have live music. Some group plays, usually somebody you've heard of, and lots of really great food. And it's usually food from, that the player likes. So I remember one year, I can't remember who it was. Somebody was from Louisiana and brought in Popeyes, and Popeyes was the food of choice because that was his favorite meal. So they had Popeyes at his, but it's usually really great food at these parties. So I have talked my way into Andre Johnson's party.
Charean, I do want to get back to the Aggies here in a second, but you mentioned Andre Johnson. Is it possible? And look, when it comes to Dre, I got homerized. There's no doubt about that. But is it possible that a Hall of Famer is sometimes underrated, undervalued? And I think Dre would fit that category.
Yeah, I think he was. And one of the reasons was when you look at the teams he played on, he only played across from one other 1,000-yard receiver ever, and that was DeAndre Hopkins, and that was in the last year of his stint in Houston. And you look at the quarterbacks that he played with. Matt Schaub was the best quarterback that he played with, which I think is saying something. So I made those points during the not an argument, but during the discussion about Andre Johnson, that those are kind of the points I made, that the quarterbacks were not very good that he played with, and the other receivers that he played with were not very good, which meant that he was getting double teams almost every time down the field. And, I do think that he was, and I'm glad that the Hall of Fame selection committee didn't feel this way, but I do feel like what you're saying is true, that when people who didn't watch the Texans play think of Andre Johnson, they don't think of a Hall of Fame receiver. But if you watched him play, there is no question that he was a Hall of Fame receiver, and I'm glad he's getting his day in the sun.
I never watched him play a lot, right? Because I didn't watch the
Texans.
But I saw him beat up Cortland Finnegan one time, and I thought I was sold because I was up in Nashville at the time.
Yeah,
and Finnegan's such a yacker, and so I was sold that
Dre
day.
destroyed him that day. He destroyed him. Hey, Charean, getting back to the Aggies, what's the biggest area of improvement that you expect to see this year?
Well, I think the defense is going to be really good, and they're going to keep us in every single game. I don't think there's any question about that. I just read the story in 12th Man Magazine last night on Elko and the improvement that the Aggies made when he came and where they finished every year. And I think we're going to see that sort of defense, and it's going to keep you in games. And then it's just up to the offense, how well they play. And, I hear that the foot injury of Connor Wegman is healed. He didn't look good the couple times I saw him in the spring, and I hope that's true, that it's healed. It's 100%. If it is, I think he's got a chance to do great things, really, really big things, because I think the offense also is going to be improved with him at quarterback if he can stay healthy, and you've got some depth behind him. But just what Colin Klein's going to do with that offense. So But I do think the defense is it's going to get back to the wrecking crew days, and they're going to keep A&M in every single game that we play, and it's just a matter of what can the offense do to score more points than the other team, because they're not going to give up a ton of points. I wouldn't expect. So that's what I'm most excited about, I think, is to see that defense. And I don't know how you block all those defensive linemen. I just think they're going to be in the backfield constantly, and I hope that's the case. And they give quarterbacks and even running backs back there.
Well, yeah, I think that I agree with all that. I think A&M's going to be really good on defense, especially the defensive line. But I think we're still going to have questions about the offensive line until we actually see them block. See them knock somebody. And I think that's a great thing about playing Notre Dame first, because Notre Dame has a ballyhooed word that's not used enough. I bet Charean loses that word though. Defensive front. Yep. And if you can actually get a push against those guys, then you're going to feel like you can get a push against everybody.
Yeah. Yeah. And that is the key, and I completely agree with you. The key on offense is how well is that offensive line going to play. And if they play well, it's going to be a really good year on offense. If they don't play well, then it's not going to be a good year on offense. It's all going to boil down to how that offensive line plays. And they are going to be better. The question is how much better. And if they're significantly better, then I think the offense is going to be significantly better, regardless of the losses that you've had at your skill positions. I think it's going to be a really good offense. So, I do want to see, you're right, in that first game, how that offensive line plays. And if they play well in that game, then I think we can look forward to having a great year.
Charean, I'd love to get your perspective, because I don't know if it'll be the same as OB's on this, but Sam Pittman, during SEC Media Days, mentioned that he's ready for the series at Jerry World to come to an end. And you had a different perspective than a lot of people around Aggieland. Yeah. It's like, you want to keep it going because of the dominance.
It's so dumb, because you look at our record at AT&T Stadium, okay? Think about how many of those games went to overtime. Think about how many of those games came down the end. Arkansas missed a field goal, whatever happened. Think about that. Those are losses at Arkansas. I'm sorry, but those are losses at Arkansas. So your record against Arkansas is not going to be the same. It's not. So you're going to lose some of those games that you won at AT&T Stadium by going to Arkansas. Anytime you have dominance like that, I don't understand why you'd want to leave. Like, I would be pushing to stay. I don't care, and it's all about money. We all know that. But from a record standpoint, I'd be pushing to stay there. You've got a great record there, and I understand you want the home games against Arkansas, but guess what? You got to go to Arkansas every other year. It's going to be a lot harder playing at Arkansas than it is playing at AT&T Stadium, where half the stadium is in your favor. That's just my opinion, and I just think a lot of those games that we won at AT&T Stadium, if they've been at Arkansas, we've gone to overtime, or he's kicking a field goal to win the game. Saw that a couple of years ago. If that was the case, we probably lose those games.
That's a valid point. And for travel purposes and things like that, I like, but I'm a purist that thinks just a couple of games a year, Texas, Oklahoma, Georgia, Florida, should not be played on campus. I like college football on campus.
Yeah, and I get that. But from A&M's perspective, how they're looking at it with their record there, to me, you just have to it would be a push to stay. If I'm coaching A&M, I'm saying I want to keep playing there because we are dominant over Arkansas there. That would be the way I would look at it as
Charean,
a coach.
If you were coaching
as a coach.
If you were coaching A&M, we would not have needed that advantage. We would have just needed somebody that could make a smart decision.
I like it.
Charean, we spoke about the Texans, but what about the Bears with Caleb Williams? Just what have you heard about his transition to the NFL?
Yeah, it's all going to come down to how he plays. I am going to pick them to make the playoffs. I don't know if they'll win that division over the Lions. And the Packers, that's going to be a great division. That's suddenly turned into one of the best divisions in football with those three teams at the top of that division. And, the Vikings aren't going to be horrible, but they're probably going to be last. I'm going to be surprised if they're not last in that division. But the Bears do have a chance to win that division because of all the talent they have. It's just what we're talking about. That defense with that Eberflus running it last year, the last half of last year, was excellent, one of the best defenses in football. So that defense is going to keep them in games. It's just a matter of how good is that offense going to be. And just like A&M, it's going to come down to that offensive line because they have so many weapons. And it's going to come down to how Caleb Williams plays as a rookie. If he plays like C.J. Stroud, I think this is a team that probably will make the playoffs and has a chance to do something in the playoffs. If Caleb Williams plays like Bryce Young, then they're probably going to be in that. I don't think they're going to be as bad as Carolina was last year, but I think they're going to probably win that 6, 7, 8 game range rather than be a playoff team. So a lot depends on how he plays, but he's looked good so far, kind of what we expect from the number 1 overall pick.
Well, even though our Chicago resident and social center guy Matthew Dawson is over there dancing around at what she said, I'm going to say tap the brakes there. I think the Bears, Charean, are the NFC's version of the Jets, and that they're always trying to go, hey, what's the next big name at quarterback? And I'm going to bring somebody else in. And by the way, I think that great quarterback going to the Bears was like 7-6 last year, or 8-5 last year at USC.
Yeah. Well, and they haven't had a great quarterback. That's been the Bears' problem.
Well, I kept hearing everybody tell me how good the last guy was. Of course, I was listening to ESPN radio, and what does that mean?
Yeah. Well, McMahon in '85 wasn't a great quarterback. I mean, nobody's going to cast him as great. They haven't had a great quarterback, so that's what they've been in search of
it's
for
Sid
their
Luckman.
entire franchise history. Who?
Sid Luckman.
Well, since in the modern era, Sid Luckman that's the point. Sid Luckman is the last great quarterback they've had at that position. So what I'm saying is modern era. I guess I should have clarified.
I know, Charean, I'm playing.
Yeah,
Hey.
yeah, but modern era they have not had a great quarterback at all, and that's what they've been in search of. So
you're not buying Bob Avellini.
We're going to find out. What'd you say?
You're not buying Bob Avellini or Jay Cutler, huh?
No.
Hey,
none of them.
Charean, what can you tell us about the Cowboys and what's going on with them?
It's going to be sad.
Yeah, the contracts still are what the contracts are. They've got to get CeeDee Lamb signed. I don't think he's going to show up. If this goes into the regular season, and it might, I don't think he's going to show up. I really don't. I think they're in big, big trouble if he doesn't show up. And you remember Ezekiel Elliott held out and reported right before the regular season started, held out of training camp, and he was not good early that season. I think we could possibly see that from CeeDee Lamb. Same deal. If CeeDee Lamb isn't the CeeDee Lamb that we saw last season, I think this offense is in trouble. I think the Cowboys are in trouble. And now they've lost Sam Williams on the defensive line. They did not have a lot of depth along the defensive line, particularly at defensive end. And, your starters are great there. But behind them, you just don't have a whole lot. So, Cowboys fans, we kind of had an argument on X the other day about whether Cowboys fans, and Olin, you can answer this, or apathetic, or are they frustrated and angry, whatever any of those words apply. I think they probably all apply, but I just don't see a real great year for the Cowboys. I don't see any possible way, even if they stay healthy the whole entire season, that they have a great season. I think they're not going to have a terrible season. They're not going to win 2, 3, 4 games. They're going to get to the playoffs, but they're not going to do anything in the playoffs. They're going to be in that 9, maybe 10 wins out of 17 games and get to the playoffs and lose in the first round again. They'll have to go somewhere and play. I just don't see any possibility of the Cowboys having a great season this year. The season that Cowboys fans have hoped for since 1995.
You don't think McCarthy's going to pull all the right strings and make all the right calls? No, I don't either.
I don't.
Hey, Charean, last thing for you. Deshaun Watson, I know he has a scheduled day off today, but he ended practice prematurely or something to that effect?
Yeah, he did, and
you need a massage?
Well, I had that joke privately on a text string. So, he bounced the ball in front of the net from 25 yards out, and then took off his pads and started rotating his shoulder. And they say everything's fine. With shoulder injuries after shoulder surgery, it's something you've got to watch. And I'm sure they'll be watching with him. And he does have a day off, and we'll see how he comes back and plays. But really important year for him, regardless of that fully guaranteed contract. They can get out of the contract after this year, and I think they probably will if he, A, gets hurt, or B, doesn't play very well, stays out there for all 17 games and doesn't play very well. So this is a very important year for him. He's certainly not going to get the contract that he got this time, the next time, if he doesn't perform this season. It's been a really long time since we've seen a good Deshaun Watson, back to 2020. And the Browns think they can get him back to that 2020 Deshaun Watson, but we'll see if they can.
If they can't, do they cut him and eat up some of that? Or what do they do?
Yeah. Yes. I think they would cut him. I don't think anybody would trade for him, so I think it's where they cut him and he'll go somewhere else and try to start over. He obviously had the talent at one point. Is it gone for good? Somebody will gamble that it's still there. I mean, that's what they do with Sam Darnold. That's what the Vikings are doing with Sam Darnold, and other teams are doing with other quarterbacks. That the talent's still there. He was drafted in the first round for a reason. That's what the Cowboys did with Trey Lance, who has not looked that great at camp. Hey, he was drafted in the first round for a reason. The talent's still there, so he'll get a chance somewhere else if they cut him. But it won't be for the contract that he got at the Browns, obviously.
So we shouldn't expect a happy ending in Cleveland.
Wolf.
Charean, sorry. We'll talk to you soon, okay?
Thank you, guys. Have a good day.
Thank you. Let's put the camera on, please. I love when we have these laughable moments where you can't control yourself.
Well, she said it sounds like he's going to get cut. Who's ever happy when they get cut?
Nobody. I'm just going to let that, for the radio audience, I wish you could see this. Oh, you're lucky Billy's traveling.
If I got cut, I wouldn't be happy about it. If it's the end of my career.
Way to save that. Anyway. Look at his face. This is great.
Yeah, I'm just saying that things haven't worked out for the Cleveland or Deshaun.
For Cleveland or the Deshaun, yep.
Yeah.
I agree. Thank you.
It sounds like it's come to an end.
And it's not happy.
Nope.
We'll hit a break. We'll come back. We'll try to figure out what's next. I don't know. Right now we're talking about Rollo Insurance. The difference is real. They're an independent insurance company built around educating you on exactly what you're paying for, doing the shopping for you so that you can accomplish all of your insurance goals. They have offices all over. Look, their headquarters is right here in College Station on Highway 6. But that's beyond that. They're super local, but they're all over the place in Texas. 53 offices. You got Houston, you got Dallas, you got Tyler, you got Austin, San Antonio. You've got everything west of I-35, including the Panhandle, and everything outside of Texas. They'll take care of your car insurance, your home insurance, your farmer insurance, ranchers, hobby farmers, business owners, and their priorities are God, family, and country. That's what they're all about at Rollo Insurance. It's the place to go. Whatever you're looking for insurance-wise, call the good people there. Jackson, Morgan, Jason, you name it. Keith, they'll take great care of you. 888-44-ROLLO is the phone number, 888-44-ROLLO, or go to rolloinsurance.com. That is rolloinsurance.com. And we're back here on TexAgs Radio. We are presented by David Gardner's Jewelers in the Rollo Insurance Studio. Shout out to our friend JB Moss listening. What's up, JB? And he might have texted me after that last couple of minutes of the prior segment. I don't want to spend too much more time on the Johnny list. I think it is eating a bunch of this time of the show. But I think there are some text messages and I can elaborate on a couple of thoughts. I do want to say this, a couple things. You know how I make the comment about we should not use Jimbo goggles when evaluating Elko? I also think when you're making lists for college football, you should not use NFL goggles for evaluating college football history, right? Those are two different stories. What I did at one job doesn't translate to the next job. What Jimbo did at Florida State doesn't translate to Texas A&M. Those are facts, right? Like, you can use that as a hope of what's going to happen. But after both stories are done, you evaluate them separately. You can look at the totality of the career, but what you do in college is not the same thing that you did in the NFL. How we look at Danny Cannell's college career is not the same way we look at his NFL career. Right? That's just the facts, guys. So if you're using NFL stats to help tell your story of college football history, then you're doing it wrong. That's the bottom line. You are doing it wrong. If you look at what Johnny did in the NFL, sure, I understand the things. One of the biggest busts of all time, a lot of talent that he definitely let slip away. Yeah, okay, that's fine. That's part of the Untold Netflix documentary. When we're talking about his place in college football history over the last 25 years, he's a top 10 guy. Done. End of story. I would put him over Ndamukong Suh. I would put him over Baker Mayfield. I would put him over Kyler Murray. Do those guys need to be off the list? No. As for the Tim Tebow thoughts from OB, I don't know. I'm probably a Tim Tebow apologist. And that's okay. You know, like, we all have our blind spots, or we value certain things. But one thing I do know is the way Michael Jordan changed the game of football, and Johnny didn't do it to the same way. So please don't, I'm not trying to make that leap of faith, but when we think about how he transcended the sport, he was bigger than the sport. Johnny Manziel was that for college football. Johnny Manziel was that. I think Reggie Bush was that. Like, Johnny didn't win a national championship. Okay. Johnny was the first. Johnny is still spoken about. Johnny is just as popular. Like, I don't know. Look, Calvin Murphy was an amazing player. Calvin Murphy, excuse me. Yes, Calvin Murphy was. Calvin Johnson, excuse me. Calvin Murphy is a Hall of Famer. But Johnny Manziel can't walk anywhere in the country, probably in the world, without being stopped. Okay? By the way, Ryan Leaf could walk around. He's very famous and had also the biggest bust in NFL history, has had his run-in with the laws. I bet you Ryan Leaf can walk places and not get noticed. Johnny Manziel cannot. Okay? Offensive linemen, they don't get the love that they should. But they're not walking places. They may get noticed because of their size. Johnny Manziel walks anywhere. They notice him for his history, on the field, off the field. He transcended the sport. Let's go back to the Angry Elephant News and Social Center. Mateo, I know we got a couple text messages.
Matt in San Antonio says, I read an article by Bill Connelly.
We read that one.
That's my bad.
Yep, it's okay. You don't pay attention.
Well, Matt in Houston was talking about Lamar Jackson gets consistently put in these lists and not Johnny. I really think it has to do with Lamar being successful in the NFL more than anything, to your point. I mean,
Lamar was great.
He was great.
He did not play in the SEC last time I checked, right?
Well, greatest 9-win season of all time.
Right.
Is that right?
What Johnny did in the first year of the SEC, think about where we were in history. People just fast forward to now. Leaving the Big 12 and all the comments about you can't even win in the Big 12. You're going to the SEC. You're going to get destroyed. And what Johnny did that year, and look, it wasn't just Johnny. Obviously, that amazing offensive line. The system was perfect for that first year and the first few years of SEC play. The defense. There's a lot of Mike Evans, hello, Ryan Swope. There's a lot of reasons to but think about where we were in time when evaluating sports and stats. Okay? All that has to be part of the equation, Matthew.
I agree. I agree. But another text message on the same front. If Sue is number one, meaning the Ndamukong Suh, then Johnny's a huge miss, and I'd add Miles should at least make the top 35.
Look, we could probably get a panel of guys, experts from around, and make our, like, I don't know who needs to be off. There's a couple names that I think should be off over Johnny, but I don't know if that means they should be off the list completely. If you're looking at 25 plus 10, 25 who made the list, 10 of the next 10. Johnny, come on, really? 35 players better than Johnny Manziel in the last 25 years? No.
It feels like the criteria is not very thoroughly explained because it's like, is it national championships? Because Lamar Jackson's on the list, so it must not be that. Is it just stats based? I don't know. Because is it awards based? Because Jonathan Taylor's on the list. He never won a Heisman. There are 2 running backs that won a Heisman that are not on the list or even in the top 35. So I don't know. I don't know what their criteria is. It sounds like it was just a bunch of their media members kind of voting on it.
Yeah.
And because I know it's Bill Connelly's article, but I don't think it's his rankings per se.
Well,
it says I guess he welded certain lists together. So I'm not gonna blame Bill Connelly because I love what he does.
I do too. But this list is wrong. By the way, he had a list not that long ago, and I'm trying to see how consistent his thinking is in May of the top 15 quarterbacks since the 2000s, and Johnny was on that list, obviously, as he should be. And he had him behind, let's see, the players that rank ahead of Manziel are Robert Griffin, Trevor Lawrence, Baker Mayfield, Cam Newton, Kyler Murray, Joe Burrow. 2 of those quarterbacks won a national championship, obviously. Look, Johnny Manziel transcended the sport. We need to move on from this topic, but his stats, his time in history, what he meant to the program, what he meant to that stadium across the street, what he meant to this company. Like, listen, guys, Trevor Lawrence should be on that list. I'm not saying he shouldn't be on that list. He absolutely should be on that list. Did he transcend the sport? He's a winner. I get it. Johnny Manziel won for Texas A&M. Not a national championship, but I'm not in the minority here. There was nobody playing better football than Texas A&M at the end of the 2012 season. Nobody. They would have won the national championship if there were playoffs. And I'll stay with that. Right now, we're talking Aggie Land Express Car Wash. They got 2 locations. You got the South College Station location that people have been going for a long time. And they have the newest location, 2528 Texas Avenue South in College Station across the Planet Fitness. Obviously, they both offer the services that you want when it comes to self-service, right? The different wash options, the free vacuums, the towel, the unlimited monthly memberships starting as low as $19.95. But the new location offers the full-service wash, right? And it's a full service where they're going to take care of all the cleaning, all the drying, all the vacuuming, armor, all interior, all under completely covered area so that your car stays cool. And they have a special deal for a limited time. If you go there, they're going to give it to you for half price. So it's normally $40, but you can get $20 off if you tell them that I sent you to go there. And we're going to give away 1 free one. So the first caller at 979-693-1150 is going to get a $40 value, a free car wash from Aggieland Express Car Wash, but you have to go to the new location there on Texas Avenue. Give us a call, 979-693-1150, and you will get yourself a free car wash if you're caller number 1. And we're back here on TexAgs Radio. We are presented by David Gardner's Jewelers Rollo Insurance Studio. I'm going to ask the group collectively, how good is the ACC? Not the future of the ACC, but when we talk about the teams in the ACC and the chances to win at the highest level, as of today, the information we have, how good is the ACC? Nick, how good is the ACC? He's busy.
No, I'm not. I just had to grab my mic.
Oh, okay.
How good is the ACC?
Yep.
About as good as Florida State and Clemson want to be. That's what I'll say to that.
Okay, so
we got win totals for you if you'd like to see them. That Matthew Dawson made.
Yeah. Let me know these. Yeah, let me know because I have a method to my madness here.
Okay.
So
Take us through it.
The best team in the ACC, the three best teams, expected to be Clemson, Miami, Florida State, all expected to win 9.5 games. Or
I'm not buying Miami, by the way. But anyways,
I'm buying them.
Me too.
But I got South Florida vibes, and I also think their quarterback Cam Ward is freaking great. I kind of want Florida to beat them because I don't want to take on unless Florida just destroys them and it just shows you what kind of team they're going to be. But I do think Florida's going to be better than people think. But 9.5 wins for Clemson, 9.5 for Miami, Florida State 9.5, NC State. I think that's a good number for them at 8.5, with tied with Louisville, and SMU making the jump to the new conference, still expected to do big things. And then North Carolina and Mac Brown, who had to open his mouth about Elko, 7.5 wins on the other side of the ledger. I didn't even mention Syracuse with 7.5 as well, and Elijah Robinson. So the reason I bring up the ACC in this conversation is because Jim Phillips last week at ACC Media Days had this to say: there's not a more exciting collection of teams in the country than in the ACC. And, they've added SMU, which is pretty exciting. They got Cal. They got Stanford. All right. And here's a note that I found online that says, to recap, that's 3 programs with one combined AP Top 25 finish in the 2020s. I think this is from Saturday Down South. What's that?
I said, man.
So there's not a more exciting collection of teams in the country. When I think of exciting teams, I'm trying to think when I start thinking. I think Florida State's an exciting team. I'll give them that, right?
Yes.
I think Miami could be exciting. Clemson, I think, is going to be good. I don't know if exciting is the word I would use for them, but I'll give them the benefit of the doubt.
Like, does he mean a competitive league? Because, I could see, the top half of that league maybe being competitive.
I think the SEC is as competitive as it gets.
I agree. I would argue that the Big 12 is more competitive in
there
terms
are
of
9
top
teams
to bottom.
There are 9 teams in the SEC that are talked about as playoff contenders. How many teams as of today are talked about in the ACC as playoff contenders? By the way, the Big 10, the 3rd or 4th best team is Michigan, right, by projections. And they lost half their team, or more than half their team. And but Michigan is still way more exciting today than any of the teams after the top 3 in the ACC. Here's the other note that I wanted to put out there. The ACC has yet to has yet to win a single New Year's Six Bowl, playoff or non-playoff, during the 2020s. So since the 2020s, the conference has an 0-5 record, with all 5 losses coming by double digits. Matthew Dawson, who were one of those 5 losses too?
Georgia was a loss. That was an SEC team.
Okay.
Clemson, I believe, lost to Alabama. Was that 2020? That was a blowout, if I remember that. No, maybe they didn't play them in 2020. But all those New Year's Six Bowls would have been...
missing one that I think would really resonate with our audience.
Oh, obviously North Carolina in the Orange Bowl.
In the Orange Bowl to who?
To Texas A&M.
So Texas A&M, who have had their struggles in the 2020s. Is that a fair assessment?
That is a fair assessment.
8-4, 7-5, 7-6. Okay? That is not New Year's Six. Gosh, I'm sorry. New Year's Six level of goodness, right? And my bad grammar continues. That's not good. They have that one year, the 2020 year. Have more wins in the New Year's Eve 6 Bowls than the entire ACC in that stretch.
Yeah.
Let that sink in for a minute.
If you were to pluck A&M and put them in the ACC, this is based on power ratings, by the way. This isn't just me saying things. This is like Vegas. This is professional statisticians, if you were to pluck A&M and put them in the ACC, they would be the second odds-on favorite to win the ACC. Of course, some of that's schedule dependent, but
sure. And by the way, are you able to recruit at this level if you're in the ACC or if you're in the Big 12? The answer is probably no. But we're not going to use that as a barometer for right now. I've made this comment many times to my Big 12 friends, and a lot of them that went to Texas. The year that A&M went 8-4 in the SEC with all the drama and all that season, they go 10-2 in the Big 12 that year, and I'm going to stick with it. Agree or disagree, Matthew Dawson?
I agree. I hate to diss on Jim Phillips, though, because I like him. I think he's a good. He dealt a bad deck. You know, he was a great AD at Northwestern. When he was there, I think he did a lot for that program, and that's a tough program to be the athletic director of.
I have no problem with him selling his conference, and, you know, I'm fine with all of that. That's what a commissioner should do. That's what a head coach should do. Who was it? Matt Rule the other day saying that that the Big Ten was the premier conference in college football. I forget how he phrased it, but something to that effect. He's wrong. They're not. Why am I saying it like that? Isn't that like a weird way to say it? Do people in normal conversation say, you're wrong and not? But I digress.
Yeah, I think the win totals reflect that too. And if you look, Syracuse has a win total of 7.5. That is because of their schedule. They have the Bill Connelly again, I believe, or maybe it's just ESPN's FBI, the easiest schedule of any Power 5 team belongs to Syracuse. Virginia Tech is also in that category as well. Boston College had the easiest last year. They barely made a bowl game.
Hey, Bill O'Brien. So, by the way, if you take, and I have not studied Syracuse. I know they got Fidel Diggs, right? They got Fidel Diggs, right? Am I right?
They improved dramatically on both sides of the ball.
And they got a good coach, right? So
Kyle McCord, they got a good running back, and LaQuint Allen, he's really good.
They're going to be good,
Aronde Gadsden comes back from injury, tight end / wide receiver.
But if they were in the SEC, is that number 7.5 or is that number 5?
Florida is a top 20 to 30 team in the country, whether people want to believe that or not, and their win total is 4.5 because they play in the SEC. They also play tough out of conference too, but that is the reality. Syracuse would have a 3.5, 4.5 win total in this because they're not better than Mississippi State. I'll tell you that.
I really wish I understood the schedule matrix, and I can't wait till A&M has a nice. I mean, this is not a terrible schedule. We know that, but I mean, you're taking on how many top 10 teams? How many expected top 10 teams is A&M playing?
4.
Okay.
Potentially 4.
Potentially 4. A third of your schedule against top 10 teams. Yeah, it's at home, and A&M should be good at home. Yes. But that I wouldn't call that an easy schedule by any stretch, right? So I wish I understood the matrix, not the Keanu Reeves style, but how they come up with it better, because I don't get it, and how teams like Missouri and Texas got. And by the way, when it comes our way, I'm going to embrace it. I'm going to love it. And I mean, there was a couple years ago that was it the year that they went 5-7? The schedule, I think, in the preseason felt like a very manageable schedule. Am I right about that, Matthew? Do you remember?
I'll look at that. I don't exactly remember.
I think in the preseason, the 2022 schedule was expected to be not terrible. And I'm actually typing it up as we speak because LSU ended up being. No, they were good. That was the year that LSU was really good, but we didn't expect them to be that good in Brian Kelly's first year.
Well, I don't think we expected the out-of-conference loss to Appalachian State.
Nobody expected that one. And South Carolina.
Well, and Mississippi State.
Mississippi State.
I don't think a lot of people expected them to be. I mean, not necessarily. They were a top 25, top 30 team going into the season. A lot of experience there. Will Rogers, but I don't think people expected them to be as good as they were. I mean, they were a top 20 team when they played them.
Yeah. So. In Miami, they ended up winning that game, but remember, a bunch of the players were off. Arkansas, they ended up winning. Mississippi State, that there were some issues in that game. Offensively, Devon had the unfortunate fumble. They had the block kick for a score. It got out of hand. Bama, they had their chances at the very end, but a terrible play call to end the game, and I'm going to maintain that was not the right call. You use Devon Achane as a decoy at the very least, or you give him the ball, but whatever. South Carolina, that game was over 17-0 right away. But they ended up having a nice year. That's not a game that A&M should have lost. Ole Miss, Connor's first start. I don't think people expected Ole Miss going into the season to be as good as they were. The Florida game was the flu game. You should have won that game. Auburn, there was no offense whatsoever. Regardless, my point is, all the scheduling and projections and all that. But what A&M, and this is going back to the ACC, look, Jim Phillips, you got a nice conference. It's probably not going to be around much longer, but you're wrong. Do you think they're going to survive this?
No. Personally, no.
No, they're not. All right, we're way late for a break. I started rambling. I apologize. We'll hit a break. We'll come back with a couple minutes left here in the 9 o'clock hour. Then 10 o'clock, Tom Hart. And we got a lot more fun for you. That and more. It's TexAgs Radio. TexAgs Radio, presented by David Gardner's Jewelers, Rollo Insurance Studio. Hour number 2 about to come to a close. I heard a dramatic pause when it came to the music. I hope it's not on our end. Let's read a tweet from Ross Dellinger, because we spent a lot of time talking about the ACC and their place in college football, by the way. And Ross Dellinger put me in my place. Matthew Dawson at the Angry Elephant News and Social Center.
Ross Dellinger says in a quote tweet, ACC lapping the field. And of course, the quote tweet that he's referring to is the by-conference medal standings from the Olympics. The ACC has 19 total medals from the Olympics. The Big Ten has 8. The SEC has 7. And every other conference that has a medal only has 1. So, so sure, you add Stanford and Cal, and you're going to add some Olympic medals. Katie Ledecky, Stanford grad.
Yeah.
So, I mean, look, good for the ACC.
How many Aggies do we have participating today?
We have 3. Krawcheck actually
won. Who won, you said, right?
Who won both sets. Catalina G. Noriega.
Noriega.
She performed in a round of 32 match. She won that 6-0, but then she right after that played a round of 16 match and lost in a nail biter 6-5. But then we get a chance at a medal with Beryl swimming at the 2 p.m. 100-meter backstroke. So good luck to her.
Hey, one more little fuel to the fire of ACC, not versus SEC, but just, sorry, Jim, this has been at your expense. But what team from the ACC got really robbed of making the college football playoffs last year, Matthew?
That would be Florida State.
Florida State. And they were a little whiny, were they not?
I would say so.
I think deservedly whiny, but they were a little whiny, correct?
Yeah, I mean, they didn't play pretty much in the bowl game.
Do you remember what Greg Sankey said about Georgia not getting in?
I do not remember that.
He says, we didn't fly banners all over the place after Georgia missed the college football playoffs. A team that, by the way, absolutely should have been. I think they would have won the whole thing.
It's not a crazy statement.
So he's like, look, we got gypped too. And our guys were the reigning champs, back-to-back champion, trying to be the first 3-time champions since Minnesota in like the 1700s. So, all right, when we come back, Thomas Hart, he will join us. We'll talk to Heart next on TexAgs Radio. I hope this is not Tom Hart's wrestling entrance song. Welcome into TexAgs Radio, presented by David Gardner's Jewelers, Rollo Insurance Studio. Let's go to the Boss Firearms Hotline, SEC Network, ESPN's Tom Hart with us. What's up, buddy?
There's nothing wrong with Lil Toto.
Good song.
I love some Toto.
How you been, man?
I've been good. I've been wondering, David, about this NIL deal with Texas Tech softball. Have you read up on that?
A little bit.
The
little
pitcher
bit.
from Stanford, yeah.
Yeah.
Here's my question, and I need somebody much smarter than myself to answer it for me.
So I need
She's
to get
getting
Billy?
$1 million. Yeah, call Billy. She's getting $1 million a year. I think it's a 2-year deal for $2 million. The net revenue for the Texas Tech softball program last year, they lost over $1 million, and that was with a $1 million gift from this donor who's paying this NIL deal. How does that make sense? When the program loses $1 million, how then can you pay a player $1 million? That would be, I think the Yankees' operating revenue last year was somewhere around $370 million. Aaron Judge made $40 million. Okay, there's no question that Aaron Judge sells a lot of tickets and drives a lot of revenue, sponsorship, and otherwise for the Yankees. That would be like Aaron Judge, I don't know, making $370 million a year with the organization losing that money. I don't understand how any of this works when we get to that level. In football, if Tennessee wants to pay their quarterback Nico $2 million, but their operating revenue is 40 times that, then it kind of makes sense on the football side. Do you see why I'm easily confused with the math?
I think it's not about math, Tom. I think it's about people who have a lot of money want to see their team win, and they'll do. And if you're a softball dad and you've got a daughter who played softball, you're all in. And Daddy, you got billions of dollars. Help me out. Help our team out. Like, you do it. Like in Saudi Arabia, they're paying astronomical numbers for soccer and for UFC fights. And I don't think they're seeing that, but they've got the money to do it. So like, hey, this is my toy, my pet. If I lose, it's like when you go to Vegas and you know you're going to take $200, you're going to lose all $200, but you're going to have fun. That's how I see they do it.
I think in some of those instances, like the Saudi Golf Tour is a loss leader for the advertisement of the kingdom and to help polish their image. So they're willing to spend that money. That's a cost that they're willing to take on because of the benefits on the back end. It's like, if you go to the grocery store and they got a good deal on milk and you get a cheap price on milk, you're going to pay more in other areas, right, where they can make their revenue. They're willing to have a loss leader. I think it makes sense in revenue sports to pay that money. I don't see how it makes sense. And listen, this is not a softball dig. My guess is, I don't know this for a fact, my guess is that Oklahoma softball is a revenue sport. They bring in a lot of money for that athletic department, having won whatever it is, 3 or 4 straight national championships, and what they spent on their new stadium, and go on and on. There are plenty of baseball programs in college that are revenue sports. Not all of them. We know that, especially once you get outside the SEC. But I had a long talk with an SEC baseball coach prior to this previous season, and this guy's been around. He's won a national title. And the discussion was, how can I convince donors to give more money? And I said, it's really simple in some respects. Like if you have a Paul Skeens in college baseball, whatever money you're paying him, you're making that back on Friday night by selling out the place, right? LSU sold out every Paul Skeens start. Now, you could argue that they'd come close to sellout on most Fridays anyway, but that's kind of a reinvestment in the program. The rest of it leaves me very, very confused because I'm a simple man with a simple mind.
Well, and you also trumped my argument of Saudi Arabia. You put it in perspective. It is an advertisement for the kingdom. So I get it. But I think sometimes when you are rich and you got money you can play with, if you got $1 million to give, Yeah. Hey, so I think Arkansas started practice yesterday, and A&M starts tomorrow. It's like enough of the talking, and it's going to be a lot more talking for a month, by the way, but enough of the talking without actually seeing something on the field is finally here.
Yeah, I think Missouri started yesterday too, so we've got at least 2 programs that I'm aware of that are on the field. Unfortunately, in this, I don't mean to be a pessimist, but there's two types of talk that happen once you get on the field and you start taking reps and eventually start hitting each other, is we start learning about injuries and who's out. And then the question becomes who has the depth to stand up to whatever has happened in those scenarios. But my favorite kind of news is who's standing out. Which of these young guys is having a breakout camp? Which of these guys who was a role player is looking like a star? I think there's so many unknowns in college football this year, from the typical unknowns that we have from a personnel standpoint to organizational unknowns. The rotations from a roster standpoint leads to a lot more question marks. How is this guy going to perform? How's that guy going to perform? You're talking, I think it was earlier today, about the corner coming in from Kansas State. All right, 2 picks from at K-State last year. Can he turn those 2 picks in the Big 12 into 5, 6, 8 picks with A&M? We don't know yet, and we won't know until play starts. So, and then the bigger picture question marks, right, that are huge in terms of how is the selection committee going to handle 12 teams? How many teams is the SEC going to get? How many losses could A&M afford and still be a playoff contending team? And in that line of thinking, then, like, what are the most important games of the season that you have to win to stay in playoff contention? And the way I'm kind of viewing it, especially if you're a Power 4 team, but primarily in the SEC, is that day one of the season, feel like everybody's in the playoff, and then you play your way out of it, right? I mean, because after every loss, you go down a level, and after 2 losses, you're probably out. But day one, it's kind of like, the attitude that everybody has in spring training. Like day one, everybody's in it. Everybody could win it. It's day one of March Madness, game 1 of the season. Everybody's in this thing. And then once you start losing, you knock yourself out of contention and out of the conversation.
Tom, I asked you about Missouri last week, but I'm going to follow it up this week with a different perspective because we did talk about their schedule. Paul Feinbaum said he thinks that their schedule could actually hurt them in making the college football playoffs. What do you think about that? It being too light of a schedule that 1 or 2 losses could maybe eliminate them as opposed to some other 10-2 teams.
Well, I think it's dependent on a couple of things. Number one is if Missouri wins the games they're supposed to win, that should put them at 10-2. That would include, for example, a loss to Alabama. When's the last time a loss to Alabama hurt a team, right? In terms of really knocking them out of contention if it was their lone loss, besides Georgia in the SEC championship game last year when it came really down to the wire. My point to that is it behooves the rest of the league for Kalen DeBoer to kind of, if not continue the national championship winning ways, to keep Alabama in that top tier. So that win, if you can get it, still holds incredible value. If Alabama becomes, a 4-loss team and you've beaten them, it doesn't give you as much value. If they're a 4-loss team and you lose to them, it certainly hurts a lot more. But to counter Paul's point, and Greg McElroy brought this up during SEC Media Days. He was the first one I heard kind of bring it up. My counter to both of those guys is I do not think we're going to see a 2-loss SEC team left out of the playoff. I mean, it would blow my mind for that to happen, whether that's, a Missouri team or an Ole Miss team or, wildly a Georgia team. I just think that the SEC, with its historical performances and with the strength of the top half of the league, I don't see it. And their point is, well, if you lose to Oklahoma and you lose to Alabama, your strength of schedule may not be enough to get you in. The SEC is going to get 4 teams in, maybe 5 teams. Part of that depends on if the Big 12 can squeak out. I don't think the Big 12 is going to squeak out a second because I think it's going to be a really tough fight for that first team. Can the ACC squeak out a second? Can they have 2 dominant teams going into their championship game? And is Notre Dame going to take a spot? And so, yeah, I think Notre Dame's probably going to take a spot. Group of 5 is going to take a spot. I think the rest of those leagues are 1-bid leagues, and that leaves the SEC and the Big 10 to split 10 spots. I'm sorry, not 10, split 8 spots. And right now, conventional wisdom has 5 to the SEC and 3 to the Big 10. So the math tells me a 2-loss SEC team is not going to be left out of the conversation. And Missouri and Ole Miss would be, I think, the two primarily in that conversation once we get to the end of the season.
Tom, do you think Graham Mertz, the quarterback at Florida, is kind of undervalued, I don't know if underrated is the right way to phrase it, because there's so many good quarterbacks in the SEC, but a name that people seem to forget often?
100%. And I'm guilty of it as well. I went back and watched a little bit of the LSU Florida game the other day when I was on vacation, and I had completely forgotten the efficiency with which he operated and the numbers he put up. And I think part of that, or the biggest part of that, is we award quarterbacks when they're on championship teams. I mean, look at where the Heisman Trophy has gone year after year. Jaden Daniels being an exception. And therefore, if you get undue credit, because it's not always the quarterback. I mean, how good was J.J. McCarthy last year? How many times did they throw the ball against Penn State? Didn't they run it 31 consecutive times? He wasn't as important to that team as other quarterbacks were to their teams historically. But quarterbacks get all of that team credit. And as a result, on the flip side of that, if the team's not elite, we tend to kind of forget about the quarterback and not give them the credit they deserve. So I'm agreeing with you 100%. Your line of thinking is dead on. He's efficient. He's dangerous. He seems to be a really good fit for that offense.
Do you think there's advantages? And I'm thinking about when I bring up Graham Mertz, I'm thinking about A&M Florida early, but it makes me kind of switch it to A&M Notre Dame. And you also have USC LSU, and you have Clemson and Georgia. These like juggernaut games to start the season. Do you think that can actually be a good thing? I mean, I'm thinking of Coach Elko in his first year. Like, I mean, that's a hard game to start your tenure with, right?
Yes, it's hard. But keep in mind, he did a remarkable job at Duke in getting guys to believe and, in my opinion, play above their level of talent. And so when you start with a Notre Dame, the argument can be that's really easy motivation. Like, this is something to point to week one and say, boys, you better be ready, and we can get to this point and we can have success and we can shock college football by winning this very first game. I think that's a little bit harder to do. That opening game is Sam Houston or McNeese, or even Kansas State. With all due respect, like, I think Kansas State is a great program, but it's not Notre Dame. And I think that that resonates with players. So I think when used properly, that's a great tool. When used improperly, it's if you lose the game, wait, now what? Coach said we're good enough to beat them. We didn't beat them. Does that set you back more than 1 week? Does that set you back then for the Florida game later that month or the Arkansas game? So I believe there's balance in everything and how these guys attack it.
If they do win that game, what is college football saying about Texas A&M and Coach Elko after just one game against the Notre Dame team? Do they get the props that you would expect? Or, I don't know, it's Notre Dame. Every year they make us think they're somebody they're not. Take it from there.
Well, let's go back to what we talked about a few moments ago in terms of what the playoff roster looks like for those 12 teams. And Notre Dame has a slot reserved for them. That's their slot until they lose it. It's kind of how I view it. That puts Notre Dame another loss away from losing that slot. I don't think one loss would do it, but two would put them in the danger zone given the rest of their schedule for sure. So it would be an attention-grabbing game, and I think that'd be the biggest headline coming out of week one, even if there are other upsets, mainly because of what it would mean for both Notre Dame and its playoff chances. And by the way, the quality of wins that some other ACC teams may get from beating Notre Dame, if that occurs later in the year, and what it means to the SEC non-conference strength of schedule. Remember that the SEC did not have a great non-conference last year. I think that's easily forgotten given the history of this conference and what they typically do in the non-conference. So, I think that would be the headline coming out of the opening weekend if A&M pulls it off.
What kind of year do you expect from Carson Beck there at Georgia? Do you expect him to, because he's had nice numbers, there's no doubt about it, but his receiving core is going to look different, right? But he continues to grow in his role.
Yeah, just lost another one in Ra Thomas.
Yeah.
Right. So less than what they were. I go back to the conversation we had a few minutes ago about quarterbacks in college football as a whole, but also in this league. What he has surrounding him is elite, and he's elite. He's, even if he hasn't proven it over the course of an entire season, I think he's in really good shape. I think, this is a program that won national titles with Stetson Bennett, not to take anything away from Stetson, but that's living proof that when you build a program the right way and you surround everybody with elite talent, no matter what position that is, it's that rising tide lifts all boats. So I don't think he needs that help, because I think he's got his head screwed on straight. I think he's got NFL aspirations and has the talent to be an elite quarterback at the next level. He can have an incredible year and not be the best quarterback in the SEC. There's a lot of really good talent out there, and guys that operate in systems, thinking about Ole Miss, first of all, that allows their quarterback to put up big numbers and take advantage. And by the way, if Lane Kiffin's offense wasn't productive enough and explosive enough before, now he can speak to his quarterback until 15 seconds left on the play clock. Now he can dissect the defense when they go no huddle and look out there and see their personnel and tell him directly where the open receiver is going to be or should be pre-snap. So I think that's one thing that we haven't talked a ton about, but bright-minded coordinators who love to win plays on the grease board now have a chance to win plays at the line of scrimmage, and that can make a huge difference to those guys.
Tom, before you joined the show, we spent a few minutes on the ACC. Jim Phillips' comments about the most exciting teams in college football, and then Matt Rule last week also saying that the Big Ten is the premier conference in college football. Look, I think they have to say that, but they're wrong. But they kind of have to say that, don't they?
Absolutely, they have to say it. But I just find it humorous, and the SEC is as guilty as anybody, that we've gotten into this position where it's my conference versus yours instead of my team versus yours, right? Like Matt Rule, historically, the head coach at Nebraska, well, Tom Osborne would never do this, but the head coach at Nebraska would be concerned with Oklahoma or within his division of the Big Ten once they made that move. Not concerned with selling his league vis-a-vis what another league is doing, hundreds of miles away. I think it's a sign of the times where we concern ourselves in the off season with who's the better league, who's got the better TV contract, who's got more NIL money. And there's interest in all of that, and I get it. It's kind of like the NBA offseason, right? The NBA offseason is a total soap opera. People love to follow that almost as much as the games. But what matters in college football is winning the games and making it into the playoff. And I'm not going to go Feinbaum and scorch Matt Rule for doing that, but his real concern should be less about where the Big Ten is and where Nebraska is and how they line up week one and how they can find wins and all of that stuff. But because of the way the playoff committee is structured, you constantly have to pump your league. And Jim Phillips is in a totally different situation, trying to herd those cats and keep everybody corralled with Florida State and Clemson trying to jump over the fence every chance they get.
Hey, Tom, I lied to my audience. I said I wasn't going to bring up the topic anymore, but since you're on, I got to ask you. Look, and I don't want to put you in a weird position, but your colleague, Bill Connelly, had the top 25 players of the last 25 years. Yeah. And then he had 10 after. And Johnny Manziel was not on any of his 35. And, bro, is it really a list without Johnny Manziel? Is it really one? So please tell me you're on Team A&M when it comes to Johnny being on this list.
100%, but let me give some background to it. Bill does an amazing job with the numbers. He's an analytics guy. I don't know if he embraces that definition, but in my mind, an analytics guy who is numbers driven and knows how to sort the numbers. And therefore, as you started saying it, I'm thinking about it. I'm giving consideration to, okay, well, maybe there were 20 other quarterbacks that put up incredible numbers. Nobody put up better numbers than Johnny. The numbers that even if you didn't like his style of play or you never saw him play and weren't familiar with his, dashing bravado in the backfield and you just looked at the numbers stand by themselves. So that is, I haven't read the article. Now you've motivated me to go look at it. I am, once again, a simple-minded man. I get confused by the easiest things. I'm kind of like an unfrozen caveman. I don't get it, but I promise to look into it.
To me, like, and by the way, I don't know who I want to take off that list because there's an argument for all of them. I just know that Johnny's on there, right? Like 100%. And to me, it's the stats are one part of the conversation. Also, he transcended the sport. He was bigger than the sport and I keep saying he can walk anywhere in the country and people know who he is. I don't know if Damakong Su, who was number one, who by the way should be on the list, could walk anywhere in the country. People, hey, Damakong. You know, I don't think that happens.
No, he changed a program. He changed college football. I don't think, by the way, if you just think about where we are right now, if the 30 for 30 on NIL doesn't necessarily start with Johnny, but he's a big part of it.
Yep.
Right? Because the value that he brought to Texas A&M football, to the conference, to college football as a whole, was no matter what he got for signing helmets and flying across the country and across the world, pales in comparison to what his true value is or was at the time. So I'm with you 100%. I think that can be really hard to judge, right? Because that's a moving target. But once again, even if you just stuck with the stats of what he did as a two-dimensional player, I can't imagine there are very many that put up anything close to that. So I know I know that matters to you, so it matters to me, my friend.
That's my guy. Hey, I'm going super long. I have one last question for you. You talk about, how did you phrase it? Simple mind? Is that what you said?
Yeah, I'm simple-minded, yeah.
Simple-minded. These changes that are coming to college football next year, I'm having a hard time understanding. I know it's written. I know that, like, scholarships are going to be this. You got 105 now that you can do. Walk-ons are no longer really going to be the case. Yeah. How they're going to split up the money. We're going to talk to Dan Murphy later on the show to help me understand it. But, like, have you racked your brain on what it really all means in the future?
I think it means more lawsuits, quite frankly.
Yeah.
I mean, I think the Sherman Antitrust Act is something that college football fans never had to think about before, and probably administrators to a certain extent after I think it was a 1984 national television deal was blown up. I don't think they'd had to think about it really since then. But I don't see how much of this stands. The thing that I keep coming back to is the scholarship limits. I understand the roster limits, and I understand why some of these are necessary, but nobody is going to give 45 tumbling scholarships. I think equestrian went up to 40 something, and I know A&M has equestrian, so somebody's probably listening going, he's dead wrong on that.
We're great at equestrian.
You know, men's basketball is not going to use, in many cases, especially the elite programs, they're not going to use 15 scholarships. So I think that is something that distracts from the real monetary and financial issues. Like, yes, you can throw these limits to the sky for these other sports in terms of what the scholarship availability is. Very few, if any, of those programs are, when I'm talking mainly about the non-revenue, but even men's basketball, are going to fund themselves in that way. The scholarship's going to go unused. So the idea that you're selling, oh, look, you can have 45 tumbling scholarships. Great. You could, but you won't. Right. So it's irrelevant. Baseball's a totally different story. They've been underfunded for years. How that's going to match with Title IX is a question for the folks in the front offices, so to speak. But I think that we're a long ways away from this getting figured out.
Tom, I appreciate you, brother. Sorry for keeping you so long.
No, I loved it. Anytime.
Thanks, man. Talk to you soon.
Bye, David. See you, bud.
Tom Hart here on the awesome hotline that we call the Boss Firearms Hotline. All right, we'll hit a break. We'll come back, open segment. Then Dan Murphy, super smart guy, coming on the program from ESPN to help break down what that future is going to look like. I'm going to ask him some simple questions because I get it. Like, I read it, and I'm like, okay, but what does it really mean? Like, how are we dividing the money, men and women? Is it, 9 million here, 9 million there, 9 million everywhere? I don't know. We'll ask him. Ground shuttle time. They are. I drove by on Saturday night. We were coming back from the movie. That parking lot was packed because you can park there, by the way, first 4 days free when you go there. But the people are they know, like, when you're going to travel, you go to Ground Shuttle. They offer reliable shuttles from Bryan College Station to George Bush Intercontinental Airport. You can commute in comfort. Luxury shuttles, reclining seats, power outlets. You can enjoy the ride, catch up on work emails, read a book while your shuttle driver takes care of all the driving for you. And if you've been to George Bush Intercontinental Airport, you know it is so difficult to park. You have to park in, like, Guam and walk, or take the shuttle and you're going to be late. Like, let them just take you front door, right? Boom. And you don't have to worry about a thing. They offer 9 shuttle times weekdays every hour and a half, 5 shuttle times on the weekends every 2.5 hours. You could book any vehicle in their fleet to accommodate your group size to go anywhere you want for that charter service. They're a local company, and they will not book anything unless they can guarantee it. Very easy to book online. It is groundshuttle.com. That's groundshuttle.com, or call them up, 855-303-4415. That is 855-303-4415. Ground Shuttle. Let them do the driving. I think sometimes people make up their minds about a guest, and they don't always listen to everything they say. I'm looking at, and JW, I'm not calling you out, but a couple weeks back, he sent out Tom Hart is a hater deluxe. Today he goes, last time A&M 2020. What did Tom Hart say about that whole? I don't even know what he said.
I have no idea.
I thought he gave A&M a lot of props. I don't know. Dave and Edmund was also typing something, then realized, wait, he was giving us props. So I think Tom did nothing but prop up A&M there in that segment. If I'm missing something, let me know. But sometimes I think we jump to type things without like let it all play out. Let's go back to that Angry Elephant News and Social Center. Got a couple minutes before we talk to Dan Murphy. I know you got some SEC highlights to give us.
Yeah, so we've been talking about Texas A&M versus Notre Dame, week 1, which, by the way, 32 days till that game. I don't know if you can believe that or not. Almost a month, which is awesome. I just want to talk about and highlight some other SEC matchups week 1 that maybe people are forgetting about. I mean, we've talked about Florida versus Miami, like that game. That game's week 1. It's in Gainesville.
Yep.
Miami's only favored by 2.5. That could be a great game.
I think it's a great game, and that's one that I worry about just because, like, there's because I worry. I apologize. But one of the reasons I worry is, what if Florida's really good, right? What if they're really bad? How does that all translate? Because I only see negative things from this game. If they're really bad, they're going to be really good against A&M, right? What if they're really good? They're going to be really good against A&M. And that's just how my mind works. I'm stupid, I know. You get me, Matthew?
I get you. And I think that game also, in terms of recruiting, like the impact that game alone might have on recruiting in the state of Florida,
Sure.
It could have a big impact.
Yeah.
You know, obviously we're talking about Billy Napier's job, you know, that impact with that game. But I think there's a lot of ways that you can look at that game.
100%. What other games do you want to highlight from that first game week?
Well, Georgia playing against Clemson in Atlanta. So I guess that's a neutral site game, but Clemson's favored by 13.5. 2 touchdowns.
Wait, Clemson?
Sorry, Georgia.
Okay, I was going to say, there's no way Clemson's
They're underdogs.
Yeah,
by 13.5, almost 2 touchdowns.
I'm rooting for Dabo this year. I'm rooting for Dabo. I am.
Yeah,
I like him.
I appreciate his values.
I do too. I like him. I think he's got he unfortunately he might be heading in a Jimbo direction. And if he were in the SEC, he would be Jimbo. Like, honestly, I do think that. But, I hope it works for him. I just have a hard time seeing it work.
Loyalty is a core value of Texas A&M.
This is true.
So we can all appreciate that, right? Some other less kind of big in-the-moment games, Vanderbilt versus Virginia Tech. I know a lot of people are talking about Virginia Tech being a sleeper team in the ACC. Virginia Tech is going to Nashville, and Virginia Tech is favored by 13.5 as well in that game.
All right, hold that thought because we've got Dan Murphy coming up here in the next segment. Schulte Roofing Time, an award-winning roofing company that provides industrial, commercial, residential services to Belleville, to Brenham, to Bryan, to College Station, to Conroe, to Montgomery, to Navasota, to San Antonio, and the Woodlands, and, of course, surrounding counties. Schulte Roofing is the home of the Bulletproof Roof Guarantee, the industry's absolute best roofing system, roof installation warranty, and 100% satisfaction guarantee or your money back. Since their humble beginnings in 1994, they've been led by committing to excellence, growing into a top 100 roofing company. They're the place to go when you need a new roof and have it checked out. The phone number is 1-800-4ROOF, 1-800-4ROOF, and you can go to their website, schulteroofing.com. That's schulteroofing.com. All right, we're back here on TexAgs Radio, presented by David Gardner's Jewelers, Rollo Insurance Studio. Let's go to the Boss Firearms Hotline, talk to an expert. ESPN's Dan Murphy joining us here on the program. Dan, good morning, buddy. How you been?
Good. How are you? Good morning.
Good, man. Hey, so, I just had a segment with Tom Hart earlier, and, I know I'm not the smartest guy, but when I look at the future of college athletics, and I read your article, you help me kind of understand a little bit better, but I want to kind of go back and forth on some of these questions that you had in your article, because I get it, but I don't. So let's start it off. Players will start being paid next fall, correct? This is about a year away, and they're right now just getting the framework ready.
Yeah, so you're right. There's a lot to unpack with all this stuff, and we learned a little bit more this week, but we didn't learn everything. And yeah, so as long as the settlement goes through, right, which is still an if, this thing isn't done, there's still a couple other legal hurdles for it to get over. But let's assume everything goes to plan. Then this time next year, schools will be cutting direct checks to their athletes.
So then how do they, I know it's going to be individualized per school, right? But what's the future going to be when it comes to, all right, the men's programs get this, the women's programs get that, and football can use all of it, or you have to, help me understand the way it's going to be broken down.
So you're going to have a big pot of money that each school somewhat on their own decides how they're going to split up. It's going to start at about $22-23 million next year. That could grow over the course of the next 10 years up into the low 30s of millions of dollars that each school will be able to give out. And there are some rules involved in this, not so much in the settlement, but with Title IX law, right? Title IX law says that if you give a scholarship to a men's team athlete, you have to give a scholarship to a women's team athlete. They have to be equal. It's unclear whether or not, how much Title IX will apply, whether that means that if you give $1 in an NIL deal to someone on the football team, do you have to give the same dollar to someone on the women's swimming team or the soccer team or something like that? Or can you say, well, football brings in 80-90% of the money, so to make this fair, football should get 80-90% of the revenue share. And I think we'll see schools sort of sort through which of those two paths they want to go down. My guess is that we'll land on the second one eventually, just because everybody's going to want to push the envelope and see if they can get there to compete in recruiting. But we'll probably see some more lawsuits come after this lawsuit to sort out how all that's going to look down the road.
Yeah, Trev Alberts was at our preseason kickoff event this past weekend. He said, no matter what decision we fall on, somebody's going to come sue us. That's just the direction it's going to go.
Yeah, I think he's right. I think, that this settlement is a really big step forward in the NCAA trying to figure out how to build a system that works in the future, but it does not solve all their problems. There's still open lawsuits about whether or not these players are going to be employees in the future. There's going to be other lawsuits about how this one gets sorted out. I think we're still several steps away from having a system that feels sustainable, and probably, frankly, a split between the haves and the have-nots away from having something that feels sustainable.
Yeah, it feels that it's moving in that direction. And then, by the way, and I know last time you were on, we talked a little bit about this. NIL collectives, are not going anywhere. These are two separate matters. So the players are the super rich players are gonna continue getting rich, plus this stipend.
Well, so this is the thing that I found most interesting about what we learned late last weekend on Friday night. They filed all these court papers, and this new kind of revenue share is. It's not exactly this, but it's easiest to think about sort of as a salary cap, right? Here's what the school is going to be able to pay, and we have a cap across every school so that they can be somewhat fair and balanced. The NCAA is trying really hard to change what collectives do. You're right. They're not going to go away, right? There's always going to be a collective that can act in a way as at least as a marketing agent to say, hey, we know everybody in town. We're going to go try to find you endorsement deals at the local pizza shop or car dealer or whatever it may be, and try to arrange those for the athletes. But the way collectives work now, most of the money coming from collectives is, ostensibly on its face, it's supposed to be for an endorsement deal, but really you're paying for the kid to show up and come to the school and be on campus, right? I think everybody sort of come to grips with that being the reality. The NCAA is trying to stop that. So there are a couple pieces in this settlement that say, moving forward, if you're a local business owner in College Station and you sign an NIL deal with a quarterback at Texas A&M, it has to be for a, quote, valid business purpose. So you can't just pay a kid $1 million to show up and sign autographs for an hour at your shop. That's the NCAA is trying to stop that from happening. I think that's where we're going to see more lawsuits and more legal challenges come to play. But that to me is the biggest question of what this looks like moving forward. Is this, so let's call it $23 million pot to start? Is that the new ceiling of what top schools are going to be paying, or is that the floor of what every school is going to be giving that, and then the collective is going to come over the top of that? And the NCAA is trying really hard to make it the ceiling, and they've got some pretty firm rules in place in the settlement if they're able to get them to stick to do that.
Do you think it's possible that's the case? And then if it is, like, there's always going to be a way for the bag man to get his money out.
Yeah, if they end up putting that in place, it's just going to go back to what it was in the 80s and 90s, where that money's going fully out of the table. Because if you're a football team, the top 15, 20 football teams in the NCAA, the football team alone is bringing in $100 million a year, right? Or more. Texas, I think, was like 170 was the highest, and A&M wasn't too far behind them. And if your football team is only getting at most $15 to $20 million a year, that's just not there's more supply than demand in that equation right there. And so somebody's going to find a way to add an extra dollar to go get a slightly better player as long as they can. And, I think we're still a long way from sort of satisfying the marketplace and having people we'll have people finding other ways to spend money if those doors get closed to them through the collective.
Dan, excuse the dumb question, right? But why don't we see this in pro sports? The collective portion, like, hey, we're a small market team, but we got some brilliant business owners here in town. We can maybe see what I'm saying?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. And there's a couple reasons. One, the money is so much different, right? So we were talking about how, let's call it just $100 million for round number of what a football team brings in. If this was the NFL, this is the NBA, players would be getting $50 million of that. And there's just sort of like the way that economics works out. Naturally, it's like that satisfies the market, that about the labor is going to get about half the money, and everyone decides that's somewhat a fair deal, or your competitor's not going to come over the top on you. The other thing that happens in pro sports is that because they have collective bargaining agreements, all of the owners and all the players get together and say, hey, if I own the Kansas City Chiefs and I also own Kraft macaroni and cheese, or whatever it is that some ownership group owns, I can't pay Patrick Mahomes a bunch of money out of my Kansas City Chiefs wallet and then a bunch of other money out of my other business wallet. And so that's all negotiated through a collective bargaining agreement, and it's why they're able to stop that from happening. But unless college sports has a union and a collective bargaining agreement, it's probably going to be illegal for them to tell a booster who owns a separate business, hey, you can't pay a guy X amount of dollars to come promote your car dealership, because the NCAA doesn't have the authority to step in between those relationships.
Isn't it interesting that the CBA was started to help the athlete and the player, but in the college football world, it would actually hurt them to be a union in this example?
Potentially. I mean, it would be a negotiating chip, right? So they would reel that back in, but at the same time, they might say, okay, if you're going to take that away, then we, the football players, want a cap of $50 million a year instead of $25 million, right? So I think history has shown that in pro sports specifically, labor unions have totally changed the dynamic of how much athletes are making it in a way that's really, really good for athletes. And I think if college football players were ever able to unionize, it would work out pretty well for them in the long run. Although, yeah, it would change the shape of how money flowed through the sport for sure.
Do you see a world where the haves and the have-nots are actually there here in the next 5 years, let's say, and all right, this is how we're going to do it moving forward. If you're in this SEC Big Ten conference, whatever we call it, league, and also we're going to put some new rules in our league if you want to play in it for transfers and et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, I can see a version where the top 30, 40, 50 schools, whatever it may be, decide, we are a full-blown entertainment industry. We're still going to have guys go to class, and we still want you to be connected to the school in some way, but we're going to be, for the, a version of professional sports. And once you get there, if you get down to, let's say it's 30 or 40 teams, one of the problems with unionizing college athletes, right, is you've got 20 different sports and 70 or 100, and depending on how 70 Power 5 schools or 130 FBS schools. It's really hard to organize that many athletes. But if we get to a point where you've got a league where it's just 30 or 40 football teams from different schools who are doing their own thing and have split off, it gets a little bit easier to organize that group of athletes. And I think we could see a collective bargaining agreement in the future between that kind of a size league and the players who would play in it. And once you get a collective bargaining agreement, you can limit the transfer portal. You can limit the way players move around legally without running into all the lawsuits the NCAA has run into in the past few years.
Dan, last thing for you on the scholarships and the walk-ons potentially going away. A school like A&M who embraces the walk-on, the 12th man, obviously, they don't have to necessarily give 105 scholarships, right? They have the ability to do that.
Yeah, thank you. That's been driving me crazy to hear coaches talk about this. So the way this is changing, right? So the instead of being a limit on 85 scholarships, there is now a limit on how many players you can carry on your roster. And it's going to be 105. So there's 20 more potential scholarship spots coming. You don't have to give a single scholarship if you don't want. I think coaches are concerned that competition is going to create a system where everybody's going to want to give 105 scholarships. I don't know necessarily that's going to happen, right? If you look at, the cost of a scholarship is maybe 50, 60 grand at most schools. If you add a men's scholarship, you're adding a women's scholarship too because of Title IX. So suddenly you're spending north of $100,000 to make sure you can put your 90th best football player on scholarship. You might be smarter to spend that $100,000 on your 10th best football player and get a slightly better starting wide receiver in the transfer portal than you otherwise might have. So I think if having walk-ons is a really important part of your culture and you want it to be, then just save 10 spots where you don't go recruit 105 kids, recruit 85, recruit 95, and save 10 for the kids on campus to come try out. And then if they're good enough, throw them on scholarship too. And then you still have the same culture of the walk-on who came from campus and the place for a real student to come on and be a part of the team. It's just, thinking about it a little bit differently. The idea that someone is forcing football teams to get rid of walk-ons is just not true. It's driving me a little crazy to hear coaches talk about it.
And Dan, a follow-up to that, if you're a scholarship player, that means you are also entitled to the salary or the compensation. It's not just the scholarship, correct? And then the walk-on player isn't necessarily going to get that stipend.
So there's no, if you're on scholarship, there's no guarantee that you're getting any of this revenue share money, right? A school can decide, let's say a football team has a budget of $20 million, or let's call it $15 million next year. They could give all $15 million to one player if they wanted to, or they could, give money just to their starters or their top 30 or 40 players. I don't think if you're the 75th or 80th best player on your team, I don't think you're going to be getting much of a check from your school. Your rights just aren't worth that much, where a scholarship is actually pretty fair compensation if you're the 80th best player on your team and not seeing the field too much. So I think it's more likely that most of those guys lower on the roster aren't going to receive revenue share dollars, even if they are technically able to, or the rules would allow them to get some of that money.
Dan, I appreciate your time, man. Thanks so much.
Thanks for having me.
Take care. Dan Murphy, ESPN. Makes me feel smarter after talking to him. Appreciate that. Right now, we're going to break. FBS Appliance and their team of experts are there to help you find the appliances that make your house a home. They have all the top brands that you need and can imagine that'll fit any budget. Caring for Texas since 1988. They have the trusted brands, as I mentioned, like Bosch and an expert staff and trained installers to guide you through the purchase, because FBS Appliance is your trusted appliance store. Their services don't stop at sales. They offer expert installation carried out by the best technicians in the area. They are number one. Visit any of their 8 showrooms across Texas or find them online at factorybuilderstores.com. All right, guys, it's time to end the day with Double Days. Caller number 12, 979-693-1150. We're going to hook you up with your choice of a dozen pepperoni rolls or a large one-topping pizza from Double Dave, serving Aggie land since 1984. They have your favorite pizza. They have your favorite world-famous pepperoni rolls. They have reliable in-house delivery, bringing piping hot goodness straight to your door. Just click on doubledaves.com, and your favorites are on their way. Angry Elephant News and Social Center. Matthew, any final thoughts or texts to get into?
Well, let's go Beryl Gastadello today.
Pardon?
Beryl Gastadello.
Tell me more.
Well, she's swimming in the 100-meter backstroke today
how's she
for
doing?
a chance at a medal at 2 p.m.
2 p.m., a chance
2
for a
p.m.,
medal.
A chance for a medal.
Do you know, what her chances are?
Well, she needs to improve by about a second on her time. So
Which is a lot.
That is a lot. But, man, anything can happen in adrenaline. We've seen crazier stuff happen.
Yep. All right. Thank you very much, Mateo. Appreciate your time. All right. I don't know a lot about tomorrow, okay? But I do know this. I believe, yes, we do. We have Bob Sturm from 1310 The Ticket, one of my favorites. He'll be joining the show at 10:35 tomorrow. I love Sturm. He'll be great. We'll have Johnny Harris on. I think Texans getting ready for, obviously the Hall of Fame game, but I think we'll have Johnny Harris and Ryan Broniger. More pool party reaction in the future, so that'll be fun. My thanks to all of our great guests today here on TexAgs Radio. OB stayed a little bit longer so we could talk to Charean. She was great as always. We had Thomas Hart. We had Dan Murphy. Only 3 guests today. How about that? That's going to do it for TexAgs Radio here on a Tuesday. Press conference coming with Coach Elko in a little bit. Connor, we got Noah, we got Bryce. Is there anybody else am I missing? I think that's it. We'll have that on TexAgs.com afterwards. We'll see you mañana.